It's a triumphant return after a couple of weeks off from a stellar all-star break out west. But we're in the Midwest this time. Iowa Speedway, the land of corn, or whatever else you may be able to call it. It is the host of the 15th race in the Season 7 4Wide Racing TJ's Team Series. Hello and welcome to the Drop in the Hammer pre-race show before we get tonight's race from Iowa Speedway started. And we're glad that you're joining us tonight on the KBueno Racing Network. Kenneth Bueno joined alongside by Francisco Bacalhau and Keelan Belsha. Francisco, we had a bit of time off. We had an all-star break in which the drivers went all out, not for points, but for a bit of bonus points, but not exactly for a playoff spot. We finally go back to real racing here, full intensity at Iowa Speedway tonight after a pretty lengthy break from our last regular season event at the virtual Kansas Speedway. What should we expect as we hop into this one?
I'm happy to be back here, Kenneth. A return to Iowa Speedway. No broadcast from our end last year, but we're excited to bring back some coverage of this great racetrack here in the Midwest. This racetrack, very bumpy, extremely tire-wearing racetrack, so these guys are going to have anything but an easy time out here making laps, competing for wins.
It's going to be high intensity here at Iowa, a track that desperately doesn't necessarily give you an easy route to the checkered flag, even doesn't give you an easy route back to the start-finish line when you drive this 0.875 mile speedway that opened back in 2006. And Keelan, we note the All-Star break, at least we have noted it as the official halfway mark where you cut the season in half in the route to the playoffs, and now we are just inching towards that after halfway point. We crossed the line at Las Vegas. We ended that one for the All-Star race. Now it's that second half of the regular season. Things are only going to get more important, and the heaves the drivers have to make in the attempt to get to the playoffs this season. They don't have that many opportunities left at trying to get a postseason appearance.
Yeah, Kenneth, it's great to be up here this evening, and that Las Vegas race, it really was the kind of the tip of the schedule to where you really start focusing on making a playoff appearance. They had a week off to really think about it before we came here to Iowa, and there is some very diverse tracks in the schedule leading up to the first playoff race of the season in Auto Club on April 16th. So there's 2 months and a handful of races to really make a push, and that points battle is pretty tight, so we're going to have to keep an eye on those guys throughout these weeks.
And you got to be a hard-nosed driver to get through this second half of the regular season, because we had plenty of diversity in the first half, but we have a lot of diversity in the second half. Iowa tonight, we've got Nashville Super Speedway on the concrete. The week after, we go to Pocono, the Tricky Triangle once again. That'll take part late February. Then we head to another road course. Circuit of the Americas takes place in early March. We go to Dover, Texas, and then we'll visit that Super Speedway, Daytona International Speedway, to close out the regular season. Just as chaotic as the rest of this season has gone up until this point, and the schedule will only give more opportunities as we see it for those that are wishing to make it to the playoffs this year. But we have to go on to what happened a couple of weeks ago at the virtual Las Vegas Motor Speedway, where we had the All-Star race take place not that long ago. Started with a 35-lap open. Trevor Haley, Curtis Kelly leading us for the start of that race. Very quick, but Francisco, lots of chaos. Dusty Applin getting into Tristan Bailey. And while we did see some comeback drives later, all of these guys had the one singular mission: qualify for the All-Star main later in the night.
Yeah, it was fun for us just covering the production end of this as Lawson Pio, Kyle Benson, and Jaden Porter took care of the commentary for us. But we kept an eye on all of this. There's the contact between Gabriel DeHari and Curtis Kelly to bring out what would end up being the final caution in the open. And Trevor Haley, for the second successive year, bowling off a run there from Tristan Bailey, will advance to the All-Star race via a win.
And after Haley advanced, got a couple of the other drivers from points. Christopher Bishop on the fan vote, and then Keelan Belsha, the all-star race came about. Nicholas Bauman, Mikey Neal took us to the front, but it didn't take long before we found drama. Neal got loose off turn 4, and this crash took out many heavy hitters. AJ Green, Lawson Peel, Steven Maggio, who picked up damage. So many guys taken out early, and the drama only continued on. There's Dusty Applin going hard into the outside wall off the nose of Kyle Benson's machine. Plenty of battles for the race lead, though. Definitely not shortcoming of all of those drivers and all the action last race at Las Vegas.
Yeah, it took them a little while to get settled in, but once they did, we had a great racing, and these top 2 really emerged as the guys to beat as the race continued between Healy and Hawken, but Brandon Banks being sent through the grass with 10 laps to go would end up bringing out the caution. Tyler Murray stayed out on strategy, tried to make something happen, but on the restart got into it with Hawken, stacked everybody up, and in that whole incident, no caution. So it was a top 2 breakaway between Nicholas Bauman and Curtis Kelly. Bauman slips up a little bit off turn 4, opens the door, Curtis Kelly to the inside. But it was Nicholas Bauman who hung on to get his first career all-star win, take his first checkered flag in 4 wide, and Dark Horse Motorsports went on to sweep the night in very good fashion, as that was a very close finish, one of the closest of all time, Kenneth.
It was very close between those two. We'll dive into that in just a couple of moments, but a big win for Trevor Haley to get into the Open and to the main from the Open, and then Nicholas Bauman getting that close win against Curtis Kelly, and so many drivers who took control of that race, whether it be Brandon Hawken, Jaden Porter, a bit of other drivers that were in the fold as well. Lots of them had their chance at the front, and while these guys were racing for some points, pivotal in the race that we're talking about right now for the playoffs later this season, it was still mostly about having that enjoyable time and making the use of the situation in a race that you could have a second life at. Well, as we had our history at Iowa Speedway, not a lot of it in the 4Wide Racing TJ's Team Series. Only 3 prior races at the 0.875 mile speedway in Newton. This is our 4th all-time race from the Iowa Speedway, at least as the Cup Series is concerned. But in the 4Wide Racing ARCA Series, approximately 4 years ago, nearly, we had a great run here at this very track. Take a look at our KBRN moment in time for tonight. Welcome to today's KBRN moment in time. This moment comes from another race held back in 2021, the 4Wide Racing ARCA Series from the Iowa Speedway. He's going to start from the up position in P1 on row number 1 as we take the green flag from Iowa. Iowa hosted the 3rd race of the series covered on the network, and while only 16 drivers took the green flag with Eric Schaefer up front, 3 stood out amongst the rest: Austin Reedy, Craig Lautenschlager, and Joe Sanchez. After Sanchez took the lead for the first time, the race stepped into the strategy realm, with the first pit stops taking place around lap 55. From there, Sanchez pulled away, while Reedy, who was strong all night, logged a crucial mistake out of pit road on the second round of stops. Then, the first caution came out, with a spinning Nicholas Vizzuti, leading to a late race restart. Reedy gave his best punch, but at the end, Sanchez pulled away to capture his first win of the season. And that's today's KBRN Moment in Time. It seems like every time, Francisco, I cringe when I listen back to my commentary. You and I were on that call for the 4Wide Racing ARCA race at Iowa Speedway. I can tell you one thing, we have dramatically improved from all those years ago. That was when KBRN was about a year old at the time, year and a half approximately. Now we're more than 4 years, nearly 5 into this KBueno Racing Network YouTube channel. So we have definitely evolved as broadcasters, and it's always fun to take a look back in time, especially in 4Wide history, with plenty of the guys that were in that race taking part in tonight's feature.
Absolutely, Kenneth. I 100% agree with how you feel about it, and I'm sure in 2 to 3 years we'll look back at this era of our commentary. We'll probably think the same thing. Hopefully we'll improve, all 4 of us going forwards. But I'm just happy that we're get to look back at some of these old races, and I think I see a fan out there in the stands already getting ready for the race, Kenneth. I think they're trying to make a joke that this is Atlanta Motor Speedway. Care to comment?
Oh, no, I'm not going to comment on that at all. But we can talk about the differences about those two tracks, by the way, between Atlanta and Iowa Speedway. But jokes aside, we'd step into the more serious storyline, Keelan, the playoff picture, what we are expecting to see from here on until the end of the regular season at the virtual Daytona International Speedway. This is what it looks like entering tonight's race, and it is very close. We have, of course, those drivers that already qualified to the playoffs via the win. Plenty of drivers above this cut line that already have the minimum starts needed to enter the playoffs this season, but it's only 5 points between Tony Kivet in 15th and then the first car out, Brandon Banks, in 16th, and there's not that much points to spare between 12th all the way back to 18th place in Michael Newbraw, so a lot to play for here and plenty of races for this lineup to switch up drastically.
And one race can change all of that, Kenneth. Mikey Neal has a bad day, and Michael Newbraw finishes top 3, and we just completely flip-flop what we're looking at. All these guys are going to be contending for that playoff spot. It's so important. If you want to make a championship push, you have to be in the playoffs. You can't do it from 16th. And a lot of these guys, they've had good races, but they've had their bad races too. But if you want to get in victory lane at the end of the season with a championship, it's going to have to start by finding consistency here in this late stretch of the regular season to make a push for the playoffs.
Well, one of those drivers at the back end of this cut line, 17th, 5 points out, is Christopher Bishop, driver for Murray Reedy Motorsports, and he is tonight's pre-race interview on the KBueno Racing Network. First of all, Christopher, thank you for getting some time to talk with us before we get this race started from the virtual Iowa Speedway. We noted your situation in the points, only 5 out from the guy above the cut line, Tony Kivet. What's the plan for tonight and the rest of the regular season to get yourself a playoff spot?
Definitely the plan for tonight is survival. It's very slick out here. The car just doesn't want to get down into the track. So we're just going to try to get it to the end safe. Maybe try to get some bonus points for very few incident points and try to work it that way tonight. The rest of the season, we're just going to take it track by track and kind of see what we got to do at each track. Each track's going to be a little bit different strategy for me. I don't have the pace that these guys do, so a lot of times we have to rely on strategy to try to finish up in top 10, top 15.
We've got some drivers around you that you've raced with for several years that are in this exact situation. Guys like Michael Newbraw, guys like Brandon Banks and Tony Kivet. What'll it take for you to try and get around those drivers in the points and just slowly but surely build better runs at this latter half of the regular season?
I think probably consistency is the key. We got to get to the end of every race. We can't have any races where we wreck out or end up in a wreck and end up doing repairs the whole race and finishing in behind 20th position. We really need to try to keep it in the top 20 the rest of the season if we're going to have any chance at getting into the playoffs.
Well, Christopher, you've got a challenge ahead of you, but I'm sure you're going to be willing to overcome them from tonight onwards to the end of the regular season at Daytona. You're only 5 points out, so a really big chance at still making a playoff spot. Thank you for taking some of the time to join us, and best of luck in tonight's race from Iowa.
All right, you guys have a great podcast. We'll be tuning in.
Much appreciated. Christopher Bishop, driver of the number 42 for Murray Reedy Motorsports, putting in laps in practice right now, sitting P17 with a 24.062. Good to talk with Christopher Bishop. I believe that is the first time we talked to him before our race coverage on the Drop in the Hammer pre-race show, so it's always nice to add a new driver to the fold. And speaking of new drivers, while Bishop is a seasoned veteran in four-wide competition, the drivers of Dark Horse Motorsports are on the opposite side of the spectrum. Trevor Haley spearheaded the Dark Horse Motorsports operation last season, pushed that team to a playoff spot. They expanded the team threefold heading into 2025, and they haven't had a lot of luck until 2 weeks ago at the virtual Las Vegas Motor Speedway.
On pole, it's the Indiana Hot Shoe. Trevor Haley, the winner of last year's All-Star Open. Going to do it again. Trevor Haley's going to win the Open.
Yeah, it feels great, man. I hate that I have to race my way in, but to win again this year, like I did last year, is huge.
Let's get it going from Las Vegas. Mikey Neal, Nicholas Bauman to the green flag.
It's Nicholas Bauman in the 14. Where did he come from?
Nicholas Bauman will walk out of turn 4 with a chance at the win. He's loose. Curtis Kelly to the inside. Drag race to the stripe. And Nicholas Bauman survives to win the Season 7 All-Star race.
Oh man, it means a ton. Big confidence boost for the whole organization moving forward. Hopefully we can keep it up and get all 3 of us into the playoffs. I know Juan had a bad night tonight and he's had some bad luck as of late. But he and Trevor are definitely going to get up here at some point.
And alluding to that finish 2 weeks ago, as mentioned earlier in this pre-race show, it's now the 5th closest 4-wide finish in history. Obviously not a points-paying event, Francisco, but you look at the list of races that we've had close finishes at. Season 5, the second Daytona race, still the closest at 5 1,000ths of a second. Nicholas Bauman, although he hasn't won a points-paying race, he's already put himself in 4-wide history from that win at the All-Star race in Sin City.
Absolutely, and if you look at that list, at least the top 5, Kenneth, that is a couple of super speedways with just a handful of mile and a halves, being Charlotte Motor Speedway back at Season 4, and now the All-Star race from Las Vegas. So traditionally, these really close finishes are consisted of super speedway drafting racetracks, so when you get them at an intermediate racetrack, it is unexpected and usually pretty wild. That Season 4 finish at Charlotte is still pretty iconic for Loudon Slugger and Porter in that particular instance, and we had another classic. It almost looked like it went away from Bauman there off of 4 after he got loose, and Kelly was just a mere couple of inches short from grabbing that All-Star win.
Yeah, and it was off of Bauman's mistake, off the final corner that could have easily become the catalyst of all of that, easily could have given Curtis Kelly the win. And those are 2 drivers, Keelan, that have been on the up and up, especially as of late. Curtis Kelly has been one of the most consistent drivers on a race-by-race basis in this series this season. He's been in the top 3, top 4 in standings, regardless of the week and the track that we visit. But Nicholas Bauman has started to find his footing, and although it was only an All-Star race a couple of weeks ago, him and Trevor Haley seem to put in a ton of pace, and they seem to have evolved over the course of their rookie and sophomore campaigns, and that has progressed into practice tonight. Some of them have been some of the fastest in the top 10 as we see it.
Yeah, those Dark Horse Racing guys have just been steady improvement all year. We saw flashes of their speed back at Daytona in the season opener when they were working together and leading laps, and we saw little flashes of them at these intermediates where they were up front early, but the one critique about them throughout the season had been they hadn't been able to find that long run pace, and it felt like they kind of found their footing in the All-Star race last week. They're starting to learn these guys they're racing against a little bit more and where to push and where not to push, and it's really benefited them, especially at the intermediates, and I think it could play a benefit to them at a track like Iowa tonight.
And Iowa Speedway opened back in 2006, designed by NASCAR Hall of Famer Rusty Wallace. This is one of the newer tracks on the schedule, if you don't include Circuit of the Americas, as the road course will face later in the season. But Francisco, what is this 875-mile track all about?
Bumps, and a ton of bumps all the way around the racetrack, front stretch, back stretch, each corner. Navigating those bumps with a car that is so dependent on how much it sticks to the ground with the floor design as these next gens are, it is crucial to not lose the car over the bumps. That's what everybody's going to struggle with here tonight. And why don't we get a first-hand look at exactly what it's like to go around this racetrack, courtesy of Mr. Kenneth Bueno. Take us on board for this lap, Kenneth. It was your lap.
I wasn't exactly too fast, but this track is exactly how you described it, Francisco, full of bumps. And although Chicagoland and some of the others were built past 2000, this track, although it is one of the newer ones on the schedule, it is one that shows its age a ton. It is really hard to push into the throttle midway through the corner. You'll see here in turn 1, plenty of drivers will go to the bottom. Many will elect the middle lane, but you still got to deal with all of those bumps, the underbody just slamming against the asphalt. You got to come up this rise off turn 2. Beware of the tire spin from the rear end of the race car. And then try the same here. We'll see a bunch of drivers change lanes throughout the course of the run, and multi-groove racing will be key to getting the victory here at Iowa Speedway. Who can manage their tires first, but who can make use of the wide racetrack number 2. So it was kind of fun putting in laps. I'd say it was a little frustrating, though, for sure, Keelan, putting in laps with this car, because you hit the chip in 5th gear entering turn 1, which may be a proposition that's tough for the drivers to fully get over because the car doesn't keep pushing forward before you enter turn 1 and have to hop on the brakes. But overall, still a blast of a car to drive at this track that really demands a lot out of you.
It's just a really challenging track, Kenneth, and I think there's going to be lanes that have to be avoided. Like there's bumps on the high side of the racetrack in 1 and 2. If you're trying to rip the fence, it's going to be hard on that side of the racetrack. A little bit easier on 3 and 4, but it's a track that's so different on both ends because of where the bumps are on the racetrack. And like Francisco said, these next gens, they rely so much on sticking to the ground and getting as little air under it as possible, try to get it over it, put down on the race car. And when you pop up off those bumps, that's what's going to unsettle the car a lot. And it's a handful when you come out here, especially in these next gens. I know it's hard in the other stock cars that are on the sim, but these next gens, I feel like it's probably the toughest, especially with how snappy these cars are and how easy it is to lose the rear end. It's going to be a challenge for these guys. And last year, it was a fairly caution-free race for the most part. I don't know about tonight, though. I think tonight's going to be difficult.
And it was Brandon Hawken that took the checkered flag last time we were at this Iowa Speedway back in Season 6. He's the leader in qualifying right now as we see it. Well, that'll do it for our coverage of the Drop in the Hammer pre-race show in anticipation of this 15th race in the 2024-25 4Wide Racing TJ's Team Series season. We're excited to get things started. Don't go anywhere. We've got coverage of the 4Wide Racing Series from Iowa Speedway next.
Racing isn't easy, but experiencing it is. iRacing puts you in the driver's seat with the industry's leading sim racing game. Drive on laser scan replicas of the greatest racing circuits from around the world. Go head-to-head against other drivers chosen by skill-based matchmaking to ensure competitive racing at every level. Compete across all your favorite series. In officially licensed cars, engineered to deliver the most accurate driving experience possible. Join a race or host your own with players from across the globe. Race against the computer or in a league with friends. Feel the thrill behind the wheel. Visit iRacing.com.
That's my bonus for my quota. Boy, don't nobody. I just get a check in the jail with the set. All we do is rap. Ain't worried about next. I'm just making plays, Broadway in the flesh. On us, this right here in the corner.
take a season fresh off of an all-star break with new names emerging and an abrasive track designed and idealized by a NASCAR Hall of Famer, and you add a new element to a field of hopefuls vying for a chance at the title as the regular season rolls forward. The KBueno Racing Network welcomes you to coverage of the 15th race in the Season 7 4-Wide Racing TJ's Team Series from the virtual Iowa Speedway. And welcome to Newton, Iowa in the sim, where we are so happy to have you joining us tonight after a week off of action, where alongside Francisco Bacallao and Keelan Belsha in the booth, I'm Kenneth Bueno. We'll have Charlie Byer join us from pit road shortly in the show. Francisco, we are finally back, 1 week off, and an all-star race passed. We're back to real intensity racing for points and for a playoff spot here at Iowa. We've got a ton of drivers in this that plenty have a chance to make their names known, if not already known in this series, and plenty of those also that can add another win to a great season already.
Yeah, we're starting to turn the heat up as we work through the mid portion of our summer mid-season, that is, and we start counting down the races to the playoffs. We've documented the point situations, the guys that need to win races, and all that starts to matter even more as we work our way towards Daytona. Every race is going to matter. Every point will matter to make the playoffs. So you have to start limiting mistakes from here on out, because there's just, with how competitive this series has been, Kenneth, in its history, especially this particular season, there's no margin for error. You have to take everything whenever you can.
It is going to be tough to find playoff spots as we roll through this season, just because the gaps in drivers will be a lot more apparent as we push forward. But regardless, it'll be a ton of fun as we start the second half of this regular season here from the virtual Iowa Speedway, which tested drivers last season, probably will do the same this time around. Drivers have taken the racetrack here at Iowa, so that means we'll take you trackside for the drop in the hammer starting grid. We're on the front row. It's the Canadian Brandon Hawkins, set to fly again from the top spot. He's the former winner here at this virtual speedway. He'll start on the front row with a 23.774, and he's got Gabriel Dahari, made his first proper start at the All-Star Open a couple of weeks ago. This is his first points-paying race. Starts on the outside in second place. Lawson Peel, former winner here at this Iowa Speedway, kicks this one off from third place. Season 5 champion Jaden Porter going to take his Chevrolet from position number 4 on the starting grid. Back in row number 3, you'll find Murray Reedy Motorsports' Craig Lounslager in his Ford Mustang Dark Horse, alongside Lance Hill for Stonks Motorsports in his number 1 Chevrolet from P6. Inside row 4, the All-Star winner, Nicholas Baumann, trying to get a first proper win in this calendar year from 7th. AJ Green rolls off in the P8 spot from his number 48 Chevrolet. And rounding out the top 10 inside, Tristan Bailey finished second in the open race a couple of weeks ago. And Mikey Neal trying to get his first proper win in his 4-wide career from 10th.
P11 goes to the BBR driver of Duncan Fall in his number 50, with the open winner Trevor Haley alongside him in P12. P13 goes to Austin Reedy, Murray Reedy Motorsports driver, and Zachary Hill making his league debut here tonight at the Iowa Speedway in his number 66. Then you have to go back to sophomore driver Ryan Pandiccio and veteran Eric Schaefer in the 8th row of the field. Then you go back to Christopher Bishop, our pre-race, our interviewee, and we have Jesse Prees alongside him in the 18th position. Jesse Prees, Cody Kinsey, excuse me, and no, not me, in the 20th position. That is not me. I am in the booth for sure.
Back in row 11, Brandon Banks and Curtis Kelly, that outside, will move up a row since Francisco is lined up in 20th for some reason. Michael Newbraw, Tyler Murray back in row 12. Back in row number 13, we have Craig Parks and C.J. Munier. Rounding out the field is Timothy Cook in the 19.
So it shows 27 as it put Francisco in the starting grid, but we are indeed at 26 drivers for tonight's race from Iowa Speedway. Everyone taking some laps behind the iRacing official pace car before we get started. We go approximately 176 laps tonight, 154 miles, a little over 247 kilometers. Have several tire sets left in the pits for the drivers. They will need it over the course of this race, and a pretty shallow pit road entry into turns 3 and 4. So if we end up in a green flag race, we may have some tussles with that as well. Keelan, let's get into your keys to victory from Iowa Speedway tonight.
Your braking points are going to be so important, Kenneth. That's the first thing I want to highlight, because this track is so bumpy, the car gets so unsettled. If you brake just a little bit too late, it's trouble. You can lock up. If you brake too shallow, you're just not going to be fast. So You got to know where you want to brake, when you want to brake, going into these corners, and beware of the wheel hop. They kind of go in there together. If you go in too hot, hit a bump, that rear end can pop up. You'll wheel hop through the corner, either to loop the car around or go past it. Watch out for the bumps. They all kind of go together, Kenneth. They really do, because the bumps, it's such a bumpy racetrack. They can really knock your car, unsettle them. The race is gonna be won by the guy who can have his car unsettled the least. Oh, settled the most. However you want to phrase that. That's who's gonna win this race, Kenneth. Less mistakes going through these corners, and do not repeat Richmond. Last year at Iowa, we had a pretty tame race for the most part that Brandon Hawkin went on to win. He's looking for 2 in a row, but at Richmond, a similar racetrack, we had a caution-filled race, so they're going to be looking to avoid that. And for more keys on today's race, down on pit road, we do have Charlie Byer. Charlie.
And good evening, everybody, from the Hawkeye State, just an hour and a half west on Interstate 80 from the university. Brings us to our 15th stop of the season, located on Rusty Wallace Drive, of course, named after the man who designed this track prior to its debut. For strategy tonight, 176 laps separate the green from the checkered. That includes 3, possibly 2 pit stops minimum to get you there, predicated by about 85 laps on a single tank. That's barring any yellows. Speaking of yellows, however, I do have to mention some trends here. The last 6 points paying 4-wide races have come down to a restart within 15 laps to go, of which the last 4 have been within 5 laps to go. So as much as I love a good green flag cycle based on trends and the unpredictability of Iowa Raceway, you may be hearing from me quite a bit often from the pit lane with a yellow flag in the air. But green flag or not, I will be down there all race long, giving you all the updates as they unfold. For my winner's pick this week, guys, that number 98, Brandon Hawkin, has and still is very strong here. The last 4-wide outing at this racetrack saw absolute domination, leading 147 of 176 laps en route to victory. Guys, it's hard to go against the man starting first tonight in that number 98. Back to you, Kenneth.
Well, thank you so much, Charlie. We'll be tossing in with Charlie over the course of this race from Newton, Iowa. And to talk about just how much chaos we've seen this season, our last points-paying race, Kansas Speedway, if you can remember that, approximately a month ago, that ended in a restart within 3 laps to go. We saw Scott Healy split the seas after Steven Maggio and Lawson Peel threw away their chance of the win down the back straightaway. So anything can possibly shake up the running order, even if you are the most dominant car of the night. First trip to Iowa this season, 4th all-time in 4-wide history. Brandon Hawkin, Gabriel Dahari to the green flag from Iowa Speedway. And off the precipice of lap 1, no surprise, the pole sitter takes control, only by a car length. Gabriel Dahari back in 2nd, Jaden Porter 3rd, Lawson Peel, Lance Hill settling into the top 5. You can already tell the difference in lines from everyone across the speedway. Dahari looking for the middle, Brandon Hawkin faithful to the yellow line on the inside, but 2 laps complete this time by Brandon Hawkin in control from Iowa.
Yeah, but he's got the 72 of Gabriel Dahari right on him, and actually looking to the inside is the 72 in his first points paying race. As documented, he's going to look to the inside of Hawkin, not on the very bottom of the racetrack, but trying to see if he could get that angle off the corner. Lawson Peel and Lance Hill had a moment off of turn 2. They're dropping a bit of a spots here, and now they have AJ Green and Craig Lautenslager to battle with back there for the top 5.
And Dahari, Keelan Belsha, was the fastest driver in practice. Excited to join this 4-wide racing TJ's Team Series from the All-Star Open. Had a bit of a challenge to enter the top 3. Unfortunately, did not do so. And even though Dahari had a fast Chevrolet at Las Vegas, could not complete the task of getting to the feature later on in the night. So tonight is his real first showing in this 4-wide series. He's already impressed through practice and a bit of through qualifying, and he's already showing one of the best drivers in this series what he can show.
And that is the statement you want to make as a rookie in your debut race. You want to be treated with respect, race up front with respect. That's how you get it. He's looking fast so far. He was really quick in practice throughout the evening before we got started on this race. So expect him to be a contender, but Hawken, he's going to be tough to beat here at Iowa. So if he can keep up with him, keep the pressure on him, make Hawken use
Trevor
tough
Haley
up,
and Tristan Bailey go spinning off of turn 4.
There's trouble off the final corner. First yellow is out from Iowa. Tristan Bailey in his Ford Mustang got banged off sideways, and all of a sudden he is to the inside of the racetrack. First caution flag thrown here at lap number 6. We saw that on the right side of your screen, courtesy of Francisco, who had the shot for us. And unfortunately, several drivers just got bobbled up out of turn 4. And I'm not sure how exactly that all started, but Francisco, take us through this crash. It started up with the all-star winner, Nicholas Baumann, in a huge pack of cars.
Yeah, I saw that coming from a mile away. The 14 slid up in front of his own teammate there. I'm not sure if the microphone was able to pick up my voice or not, because I was seeing all that unfold, and I was already starting to try and get the attention, but you saw there the end result, which was Tristan Bailey eventually being the one to go around. The Dark Horse Motorsports cars did save their race car. Here's the onboard with Mr. Tristan Bailey here as he's behind all of this. There's the stack up in front of him, gets on the brakes, just gets loose all on his own and spins through the grass harmlessly, no damage for his race car.
And those are all Ford Mustangs that got involved in that incident off the final corner. Both of those Dark Horse Motorsports cars in Baumann and Haley. A bit of Murray Reedy Motorsports there. And then, of course, Tristan Bailey, that main man involved, as we saw those cars go sideways off turn 4. So a rather harmless spin, Keelan, but it's a product of what we see this racetrack come up with when the drivers get a little overeager with these rear tires, specifically how you get sideways off these corners. And off turn 4, you have a bit more of an arc to the start-finish line, so drivers usually think, all right, I have a bit more ample space to use my throttle early, but this car doesn't care when you have the horsepower that you do under this thing and not as much downforce underneath the race car. You have a possible problem when it goes sideways, and it does not like yaw whatsoever.
It is really deceptive, Kenneth. I mean, any time you run at Iowa and you compare turn 2 to turn 4, it's really deceptive when you think you have a lot of room coming off 4 to gas it up and kind of catch the car up against the wall. You have the room, but you got to look at how the banking just continues throughout the straightaway. I mean, it's not like it goes flat and that kind of catches it for you. There's none. You have air pushing off the bank into the right side of the car, and it just upsets these cars, and that's why you got to be so easy on the throttle at this racetrack, especially with how bumpy it is and how banked all the way around it is. It's just a perfect chaos to upset the race car, and once we get this track rescanned and repaved, bumps taken out, and I know for the Cup race last year, they paved 3 and 4, just like one lane of it, and it changed everything about that race. So whenever Iowa gets that update, I'm going to be intrigued, but for now, it is this bumpy mess that everybody has to deal with.
And it's with those redesigns of these older racetracks, and we mentioned its youth in comparison to plenty of other tracks we've seen on the schedule already. This track was conceived in 2006, so approximately 19 years, almost 20 years to the day, so it is a little old, but I mean, you look at Chicagoland, how old that track is, Darlington and how old that track is. Several other race venues have a longer history and do not feel as tough as Iowa does. And we know in Darlington, they had paved that little section in turn 2 coming off of that corner to the Boeing backstretch, and plenty of drivers had to deal with that change of grip, right? You had little grip for the entirety of 1, then nearly to turn 2, and then you had that bit of asphalt that was freshly paved, and then the cars all of a sudden gripped up, and in that transition, you had plenty of guys deal with loose moments in the corner and off of it as well. So Iowa will not get the treatment, at least for now. We're praying and hoping that NASCAR 25 will give us a brand new look at this Iowa Speedway, but for now, we have the original scan on iRacing to deal with. Brandon Hawken is the race leader still. He's led all 10 of these laps so far. Gabriel Dahari giving a good punch, though, back in P2. Remember, Hawken led 147 of the 176 we took on last season in a flag-to-flag affair that ended in a victory for the Canadian. He'll patrol the field from the outside of row number 1, pair of Chevrolets behind in AJ Green and Jaden Porter. Back to the jump, lap number 11, first restart from Iowa. Hawken underway to turn 1.
And AJ Green slightly making his way up towards the top 4 as he was restarting on the outside, is fighting Jaden Porter for the 3rd place position. Eking out going into turn 3, Porter's not going to hand it to him, as Green, so far in this race, I've noticed that he has very content with going all the way up there. There's a little bit of rubber on the racetrack, so he might not have all the grip in the world as through the grass goes spinning the 66 of Zach Hill.
Zach Hill, the rookie in his first race for 4 Wide, goes spinning through the grass. And I believe we're going to stay green here. He's below the racing surface. He'll get it back on the pavement to the inside. That's used mostly for the Legends Oval here at this track. But Zachary Hill, not a great start to his debut in 4 Wide. And here comes the field off turn 4. And talk about AJ Green, the last several weeks that he's had in this series. Disregarding the All-Star race, Keelan Belsha had a back-and-forth race at Darlington. We know at Kansas got stuffed up in a huge crash on the tri-oval that took out himself, Lawson Peel, and plenty others. Green looking to rebound here. One of those drivers that has made the minimum starts for the playoffs and is in the top 16, but he desperately wants a win.
Really does. It has been a long time coming since he has found his way in victory lane. Darlington, a few races back, he had a good run for himself. Ran top 5 a majority of that day, and then at Kansas on the All-Star race had some trouble. So he is looking to rebound. It has been a kind of downward trend for that 48 team, but here at a track like Iowa, where he feels like he has speed, he has gotten around people. As we get a look at what happened to Zach Hill, just sliding through the grass. Comes through turns 3 and 4. It looked like he was on the bottom of 3 Wide right there. Just a simple case of gassing that 66 car up and spinning it around in the grass right there. Did a good job keeping it off the fence and flipping it around off the racing surface to keep the green flag out. But early troubles for the rookie here, only 15 laps in.
Obviously not good stuff for the rookie. Zachary Hill gets involved off turn 4. Second caution is out already from the virtual Iowa Speedway, and it's Lance Hill who appears to be in this. Duncan Fall might have also gotten a piece of it. Both of the cars relatively unscathed. But we saw Lance Hill up in the top 5. It's where he about started in the top 10. And debuting the new Trackhouse colors for his Chevrolet, he is in peril to bring out our second yellow at the cross of the line for lap number 16. So this was off turn 4 around Duncan Fall, that purple KBueno Racing Toyota in the background, Francisco. And it appears Hill may have just lost the car all on his lonesome.
He did, and Duncan, in the process of trying to avoid him, got loose and spun out as well. But fortunately for both of them, clean race car, no damage, no contact with anybody or anything. So really just a loss of track position is all that happened.
Here's a look on board from Hill. And again, turn 4, the trouble spot to bring out the first yellow. The car slides, and by that point, you know you're in that moment to save it. And while Hill does lock up the brakes, does a great job of staying out of traffic, so does Duncan Fall. And the slide down to the apron, both of them escape without any damage, possibly some flat-spotted tires. For more on the incident before this one for Zachary Hill, we jump to Charlie Byer. Charlie.
And Zachary Hill will go down 3 laps after coming down pit lane, taking 4 fresh Goodyear tires after that turn 4 spin prior to the other turn 4 spin that you guys just covered. So seeing, you can get up pretty loose off of that corner. I suspect that's going to be a big part in saving your tires tonight in preparation for that as well. So other than that, not a lot of takers so far down pit road. These guys looking at about 18 laps on their tanks and their tires that they started the race with.
Thank you, Charlie. We'll keep an eye on the strategy as it unfolds. 18 laps in, though, 2 yellow flags. Francisco, I don't believe there is any consideration right now to come down pit road unless you were those afflicted by the recent yellows.
Well, yes, basically, because we've had 2 cautions or almost 3 in these first handful of laps, so there's still got plenty of fuel, and they haven't really ran the tires all too hard to really get to the point of pitting. Certainly not this early with the tire sets you have for the entirety of the race. You want to save those towards the end of the race so you can try and use them to go for the race. And I think most of these guys, if we keep getting runs like we are right now, they've probably waited out for a handful of runs before we eventually see somebody decide to take it down pit road. But alternatively, if you get a 30 or 40 lap run, it'll be a hornet's nest as they make their way to pit road at that time.
I believe everyone's waiting for their shot at pit road, but at the moment they're just wanting to race a little bit, right, Keelan? They don't necessarily want to see all these yellow flags come out, and that has been the trend as of late on the short tracks. We mentioned Richmond. That was part of your Keelan's keys to the race. That race ended under overtime. That one had plenty of yellows, and to be fair, it was one of our last short track races apart from the miler in New Hampshire, to which Brandon Hawken also took the race victory, and that race also ended under overtime with plenty of yellows. So we're hoping this isn't exactly the same, but at a short track like Iowa, as tough as it is to drive on its own, in a hot lap setting, you put a bunch of race cars on there and you're sure to have trouble. A lot of them coming from just simple mistakes off a corner.
Those two Hawken wins, Kenneth, they followed pretty much the same trend where it was just caution filled. Hawken, he hasn't run enough laps to justify a pit stop, and he runs that tank as long as he can, pits once, and that's the checkered flag, runs to the checkered right there. So it's two races that follow the pretty same formula. And Hawken, I'm sure he'd be okay with a repeat of that to get him another win on the Season 7. So, I mean, that's what this could be shaping up to be. Hopefully we get some green flag laps, though, and maybe switch things up a little on the short tracks.
Hawken is knotted with Lawson Peel and Steven Maggio for most wins by a driver this season. They're all tied at 3. And Brandon, already in his short four-wide career, has demonstrated that he is one of the best. He's already 3rd on the all-time wins list with 8. If he gets one tonight, he could separate himself from the driver he's tied with for 3rd, Eric Schaefer, one of the best short-track drivers in four-wide history. Second restart, lap number 21. Brandon Hawken underway. A great restart by the inside lane. And the Lowe's Beefs Chevrolet of AJ Green makes a move underneath Gabriel Doherty. First time anyone tries to shoot through the top 2. Green is washing up off of the second corner. And here comes Lawson Peel. Battle for 4th place with Jaden Porter.
It's going to be tough to hold that bottom when you're trying to make a pass in 1 and 2, Kenneth. Just those bumps launch you up, as we saw the 48 drift up the racetrack. And see right there, he actually gets loose. That's going to invite Jaden Porter to going to peep to the inside. He's not going to go underneath the 48, but he kind of positions the car in front of Lawson Peel just to make sure he covers the spot. You're better off going side by side on this end of the racetrack they're approaching now, just because you have a little bit more room to work with. You could go all the way up to the wall like we saw AJ Green doing on the previous runs. But you also don't have to worry about watching up as extremely as you do in turn 1. Watch as they go into turn 1 here. Most of the guys will enter in the second lane, and they won't go all the way to the bottom. As close as they get is half a car width off.
And as everyone continues to run as they are single file, plenty of those near looks from the inside and outside, Keelan, coming in those first several laps. And again, we haven't seen a lot of green flag action to the point where we would see plenty of battles in the mid area of the field. We did see some of that before our first yellow when Nicholas Baumann got out of shape with his teammate in Trevor Haley. And it appears here, back beneath the top 10 is where you're finding most of these great battles. Here's Michael Newbraw, one of those drivers a couple of points back from the last playoff spot in 16th. Tyler Murray right in front, and Austin Reedy right behind.
I'm kind of surprised grip is being found right in the middle of the racetrack, Kenneth, because usually, at least for me, that's the part of the track I avoid. It's either right above those white lines on top of the racetrack or down on the bottom. But these guys are finding grip in the middle of this racetrack and really getting it to roll with speed. And that's something I've always struggled with here. So it's impressive to see everybody else kind of figuring it out right now. Here's the Charlie Bauer Photography onboard camera as with Tyler Murray, the league owner, a guy who was really close in the All-Star race 2 weeks back before a late restart incident. He's trying to push that to the side as he tries to make a playoff push. He sits 19th in the points right now, 28 points back. A little bit of work to do, but consistency that can start tonight at Iowa can be the start of that push.
Him and Kyle Benson, like you mentioned, staying out in those final laps. They did not take tires, and it was a gamble that didn't pay off as Brandon Hawken looked to the inside. Murray so close to those extra bonus points to find himself a nice place in the standings and holding on with Mikey Neal on the inside, now clearing for position number 11. It appears we've got a good battle further up the road, though. Craig Lautenslager, former Iowa winner, going at it with a driver who finished third last time we were here, Eric Schaefer, on the inside. That's in the battle for 7th.
And Schaefer just got loose off of turn 4 on that last lap and lost a good bit of ground. They were side by side for about 4 laps there before Schaefer eventually got loose on the bottom. Lautenslager was pinching him off and able to advance and move up in position. Lautenslager started in P5, drifted back after the initial start of the race, but is slowly climbing back up. Remember, Lautenslager's a former winner at this racetrack, I believe winning back in Season 3. trying to see if he can end that winless streak that goes back to Darlington last season on that alternate strategy.
You know, it's a short list of races here at Iowa Speedway. Our last one in the next-gen car was back in Season 5, but then we had a Season 4 series where Iowa was not featured on the schedule, and then it was Season 3, we had Season 2, and then nobody ran Iowa in the first season of this series back in 2020. So it's a bit of an on and off history with this specific racetrack, and I don't know whether it's just due to preference of how they like or dislike Iowa, the admins do, or whether the driver base seems to have a lot of fun on the track based on the car. I think as the next gen has reemerged and we had the Xfinity Series run last season, plenty of guys are now warming up a bit to this track, specifically getting used to how dangerous it is, but the fun and discipline of getting it right over a long run.
One of those rotating door racetracks like New Hampshire that we saw make a return this season. Those short tracks are always rotating because they're so hard to drive. Sometimes they produce bangers, and sometimes it's the worst race you've ever seen. So that's just how these short tracks go. But these guys are so far putting on a show at Iowa, and there are some guys who are emerging that definitely are comfortable around here. We see Dark Horse Racing's Trevor Haley trying to make a move on Eric Schaefer for the 7th position right there. We talked about it in the pre-race show. Dark Horse slowly finding their legs throughout this season as they try to make a push towards the playoffs as the regular season comes closer and closer to an end. Trevor Haley won the All-Star Open last week. He's sitting just inside the bubble right now, so looking for another good run in that 4 car, the CSX car. He brought out at the All-Star race last week when he won the Open. It's that long-run speed, Kenneth, that we've been talking about. They haven't really been able to find, but they've been finding their legs. It kind of started last week at the All-Star race, and this week slowly coming to life about 30 laps into the run.
And apart from Bauman, who stole the spotlight after winning by 15 one-thousandths of a second in the main race, Trevor Haley, probably one of the best drivers on both ends throughout the entire night. He was one of the several that had to race his way in from the All-Star Open, won that race considerably at the end with the fastest race car over the long run, and then had a chance at the top 10 and a bit of the top 5 throughout that main race and took out of winning competition in those final laps, but still escaped with 10th place at the end of that race. So Trevor Haley, not only like Nicholas Bauman, that entire Dark Horse Motorsports camp is picking themselves up, and they are missing one tonight. That is Juan Escamilla, who joined us from the YouTube chat not too long ago and tells us that he is not being able to make tonight's race from Iowa, so we hope to see Juan soon, hopefully next week at Nashville Super Speedway, where he'll join us for our Music City race on February 19th. As Trevor Haley tries to make a move here, this is for 7th, fellow Ford Mustang up the road in Craig Lautenslager, and like you've noted, Francisco, you told us in the chat, Eric Schaefer using the higher lane. We haven't seen many drivers do that over the course of this race, but Schaefer is using it to his advantage, and he has already climbed to P6.
We saw how he went about that pass, Kenneth. He started running the outer lane, and he used it to get some momentum heading in the positive direction on the straightaways towards Craig Lautenslager, and he got some positive momentum, got to his inside, and completed the pass, and that's what he's been trying to do. And further up the road, we're seeing another example of this. Jaden Porter has caught up to AJ Green. He's to the inside. He's going to watch up the track, and he gets into Green. Green is sideways. Peel gets sideways as well. What a save.
Oh, what a drive by AJ Green. Lawson Peel keeps the race car collected, and we avoid a third caution flag in this race. An unbelievable way AJ Green, Keelan Belsha, had that car on rails. Then Jaden Porter and company caught up, and then it was sideways trying to keep it from hitting the wall.
You see Porter kind of get in deep there, trying to get him clear through the corner, and then just got loose right there, center of the corner. Kind of that's about the point where you start to kind of give it a little bit of gas. He was probably might have stabbed it a little bit, trying to keep it to the inside as the caution is out. For the 3rd time today, Tyler Murray turned around on the front stretch, and Lance Hill in the one machine. You guys in trouble on the front stretch here, 40 laps into this race. Bring out the 3rd caution flag of the night.
So as soon as we almost had a yellow, we had a proper yellow. Seemed as though independent incidents here, Francisco. This is Murray right in front of his teammate Tristan Bailey. Him, CJ Munier, and Lance Hill all find trouble the same way, loose off turn 4.
Lance Hill got sideways and wasn't too far sideways, but then the 63 of Pandicio finishes him off. Had a chance to save the race car, just with the 63 there, just nothing he could do, Pandicio, that is, to avoid the one. You see the one get sideways just immediately before the contact, and There you see the 36 further up the road also spinning. So 2 simultaneous spins. This was definitely a caution that was meant to be, but also it is meant to be that these guys are making their way on the pit road here on lap 40 for the first time. Charlie.
And everybody's coming down pit road. Just under about half of a full tank of gas brings everybody down pit road for a yellow flag on lap number 40. Iowa Speedway is one of the few racetracks where it's so short and one pit lane to where the pit lane wraps around turn 1 just about halfway. So it adds a little bit of strategy because you have to take the shortest way around with a pit speed. And that's to try to gain every single advantage. But Brandon Hawkins is the first one in, looking to be the first one on after 4 tires here.
Oh, for the first time, everyone's in on pit road. Thank you, Charlie. There is Brandon Hawkins in that first pit road spot. We'll see if he can get out first. No alternate calls by everyone else. It seems to be okay. And Brandon Hawkins will lead the race off of pit lane. Second, Gabriel Dahari. Third, Jaden Porter. Fourth, Lawson Peel. Fifth, the teammate for Drinkin' Bros Racing in Eric Schaefer. So probably not surprised that we see Brandon Hawkins continue to lead this race. He has yet to relinquish the top spot. But again, in our first proper green flag run, Keelan Belsha, what did you learn there from watching the drivers? We saw a bit of backpedaling there from AJ Green, a bit of forward momentum for Jaden Porter and Lawson Peel before they made that contact with Green themselves off the final corner. Still, though, no one catching Hawkins or Dahari in the top 2.
Yeah, those top 2 have kind of been gone for the most part. We saw Porter kind of gain a little bit there coming towards the end of that run, but didn't quite get to see it flourish. Remember, we can make it about 80 laps on fuel here, so that was only probably less than half a fuel run with all the caution laps, but he was running fast. I was pleasantly surprised with the amount of grip I saw top to bottom on this racetrack. I wasn't expecting that as much, but it definitely provides a little bit more room for guys to climb their way through the field and make passes. But I feel like it's going to be tough on the bottom side of that racetrack today to complete a pass without taking 2 or 3 laps, because it's just such a tricky track to make speed on the bottom. Because you see off of 4 here, there's so much room up top to really plan it down and get the momentum off the corner. And it's a long straightaway. By the time you hit the chip, you're back side by side. What are you thinking, Francisco? What have you been surprised with to start this thing?
Well, to be honest, Keelan, most of it has kind of gone the way I thought. I didn't think we'd get too long of a run early on in this race. That was probably one of the longer runs we'll see today. And we saw tire wear already start to matter in some extent. We saw Hawkins pulling away and kind of maintaining a gap of about 8/10 consistently back to Gabriel Dahari, who's done a good job here. I'm to give him some credit. Raced with him yesterday over at the Dover Motor Speedway, and he dominated on that in that front. And it was another short track, similar package, similar driving style as Iowa, believe it or not. And no surprise to see him running P2. We'll see what kind of adjustments the rookie driver makes here to see if he can put a challenge to Brandon Hawkins in some of these runs.
By the way, you mentioned that Dover race. By the way, Francisco won that race. If you,
I wasn't going to say anything.
Last night, Francisco won spinning across the start-finish line after passing the first-place car at the time on the white flag lap. Green flag back in the air. After our third caution of the race, Brandon Hawkins leads him back to turn 1 in solid fashion. Gabriel Dahari has been faithful to that specific middle lane, tailing the seam on the inside of the racetrack, and is able to hold on to the second spot. Jaden Porter and Lawson Peel follow suit 3rd and 4th with no real headway. Everyone single file, and here comes Eric Schaefer looking to the inside for 4th on his teammate.
Teammates side by side for position. Schaefer using the bottom. Tried to go deeper on the brakes. He might roll his bottom and get the position, and he does. He clears Lawson Peel here off of turn 2. Peel doesn't get a big enough run to combat this one back, so moves the 3 car up to P4 for now. Schaefer, remember, he's a short track racer. He got a handful of wins last season on a couple of short tracks, most notably his most recent win being at the IRP Raceway, where he dominated that 212 lap affair on that occasion, and historically has gotten wins with these cars at short tracks before. So this is somebody who is going to be fast and is going to be up in the front. Don't count out Eric Schaefer on getting his first win of the season here tonight.
But he's walking on thin ice, Francisco, because Keelan, after 2 weeks ago at Las Vegas, where he was a lap car and intentionally doored Stephen Maggio down the back straightaway and the Nellis straightaway in Sin City, the admins at 4 Wide said, you're getting a 4-race probation for that. Curtis Kelly, one of the top drivers in points, is in the same place. Caution flag out. Austin Reedy, Jesse Prees in trouble. Turn 2.
Decent sized crash here in turn 1. A handful of guys involved. Austin Reedy looks like he got the worst of it. You see some damage there on the left front of Jesse Prees, and looked like there was a bit of teammate trouble going into turn 1 from what I'm seeing right now, Kenneth. And it stacked up several cars up into turn 1. We'll get the replay here so that everyone can see exactly what it is I'm referring to here. There's going to be contact here between Bailey and Reedy. That sends Reedy spinning, and he overcorrects it back into Mikey Neal, Curtis Kelly, Jesse Prees getting on a piece of it. I think Pandisha goes sliding in there as well. So a couple of guys being involved in this incident.
A ton of guys got collected in this late, specifically as they had nowhere to go off of turn 2. Keelan Bosha look on board with Lance Hill, who had a better look at all of this. There's Reedy on the left side of the screen, ricocheting up the racetrack. And while Hill is mostly able to get away from it, there's a spinning Pandisha right in front. Several drivers did not. We mentioned Kelly on that 4-race probation for the intentional wreck under yellow during the All-Star Open 2 weeks ago. Jesse Prees, of course, the heart of the incident. And Mikey Neal as well. Strong driver at Kansas, also picking up some damage off of our biggest crash of the night from a place that we probably didn't expect it to come from.
It had a bit of a big one there. A couple guys with some damage. Mikey Neal got a big hit from Reedy, and that 88 car going to be in trouble. Seems like when it rains, it pours for that 88. Ever since the close run at Kansas, it has been nothing but downhill, taken out in the opening laps at Vegas, and now not even halfway through this one with some heavy damage.
We'll see if we can talk to Austin Reedy as he gets some right front damage from the incident. Austin, you got a copy with us?
Yeah, I got you.
All right, Austin, well, you're involved in this crash. I know you've got a heavily damaged race car. Just tell us what happened there entering turn 1 from your look.
I think me and Tristan just had different braking points. I thought I broke where I usually did, and I saw Brandon hopped on him. I didn't want to run him over, so I might have gotten on him a little early, but I'm not really sure. I think we're going to be able to fix it all, though. I did miss pit entry the first time around, so hopefully I don't get a horrible black here, but we'll see what the damage is here in a couple seconds.
Still a long way to go, 126 laps left. What are you going to try to do to rebound back in this thing?
Try to fix this damage. We got a minute 30 here, so it's not over. It's all repairable. So to get it fixed, we'll just get back out there and do what we did that second run and just carve our way through. We got a good long run car, so I think we'll be all right.
Well, Austin, we appreciate the time. Obviously, tough break there on the incident in turns 1 and 2, but hopefully you're able to get the car restored and get back out on track. Best of luck.
Thank you.
So Austin Reedy, who finished in the top 10 in that All-Star race, carried to a 7th place finish at the checkered flag in the heart of the incident as Tristan Bailey just got into him. And he brings up a really good point, Francisco, difference in braking markers. And at the short tracks and road courses, you see that a lot more than you do at a lot of the other tracks that we see, even some of those intermediate venues that we visit, including Las Vegas, that we saw most recently. If you get maybe a couple feet of difference between how deep or how early you want to get on the brakes, if you got a car nose to tail, either one of them could falter on the communication of braking zones, and you have that situation where it's an unintentional move by Tristan Bailey, but it's a mistake because he just hops on the brakes a little later than Reedy doesn't understand that Reedy is slowing down earlier, and then they just make that bare contact.
Yeah, that happens when you're right behind somebody the way he was in that situation. You just have to account for somebody lifting earlier as you're approaching a braking zone, not just on an oval, but also on the big tracks as well. We've seen way too many examples of somebody getting in the back of someone misjudging the braking zone, and I don't think that'll be the last example we'll see tonight, Kenneth, as the pace car heads to the pit lane. Hawken choosing the outside lane, gets a great restart. He's able to clear away into turn 1. Dahari holds on to second. Porter trying to battle against Eric Schaefer for the P3 position. Schaefer trying to challenge back, gets loose. That could invite Lawson Peel to get back in this battle.
And with each passing restart, Eric Schaefer is set to make a jump. He's going to look to the inside. Big move in turn 3 to get right under the Kentucky native of Jaden Porter. Unsuccessful in the trip off of turn 4. And to lap 53, he'll try again with his DBR teammate in tow. First side-by-side battle, Nicholas Bauman and Michael Newbraw. They're going at it for P9. Newbraw, remember, is in that situation, Francisco, where he's fighting for the playoff spot, and here he is on the outside, turn 3.
You have some breaking news here, Kenneth. For those that are monitoring Daytona 500 pole position qualifying, a Toyota has captured its first ever Daytona 500 pole at the hands of Chase Briscoe.
So good news there. Chase Briscoe gets his first career Daytona 500 pole. Obviously, very tough that we're going live at the same time that NASCAR is going on during speed weeks, or as a lot of people say, it's speed days at the World Center of Racing. Great news for Briscoe in the real world, but not as much good news for the Toyotas in the sim, because top 5, all of them, bow tie Chevrolets. Our first Toyota in the field running is Duncan Fall, sitting back in 11th. Remember, Keelan, he was involved in one of those incidents off turn 4, single car spin. Not exactly a lot of damage to the purple BBR Toyota, but making moves now, stepping into the top 10, trying to peek under Nicholas Baumann.
He has shown flashes of speed this season in the races that he has made. As you ride on board with the Charlie Bayer photography on board camera, sitting in 11th, trying to get around the All-Star race winner of Nicholas Baumann. That 50 car has been up front, occasionally up front, slowly showing flashes as he tries to crack his way into the top 10 and put together another good run here at Iowa. A tough racetrack to get a good run at, so any good finish at Iowa, I'd say, is a good one.
And he's been playing against Baumann, who has spent a majority of this race running that tertiary lane, one that we haven't seen many drivers use, specifically in 3 and 4. There are a ton of rubber and marbles up top the racetrack, so where Jaden Porter is right now, about a lane or so higher, you'll see a bit of those marbles at the top end of the speedway. If you get your right side tires into those, you're going to lose a ton of grip, and more often than not, you could end up getting sideways off of the contact with those marbles near the outside wall. But thankfully, Baumann hasn't found himself in trouble, although he is bleeding a ton of track position. And Eric Schaefer finally steps around Jaden Porter. He'll hop into the top 3 spot. He finished 2nd last season when we were here at Iowa Speedway. Next challenge, though, Francisco, Gabriel Dahari, Brandon Hawken, 0.6 of a second between Schaefer and the next car in line.
And those appear to be the 2 fastest cars out here. I have not seen anybody really catch up to them, whether it's short run or the long run. So looks like everybody's going to have their hands full trying to make adjustments, whether it's to their whatever they can do in the race car, their driving style, but they're going to have to do something because those 2 are clearly by far the fastest 2 on the racetrack. So everybody else right now is battling for the last step on the podium, if you will. AJ Green, after falling back a little bit towards the back end of the top 10, is now sitting ahead of Lawson Peel for the P5 position. And looking a little bit further back is Trevor Haley trying to do battle with Craig Lautenslugger. That's for P7.
And so most of the battle is at around the top 10 in the mid-pack. But like you've said, I guess the storyline is Brandon Hawken and Gabriel Dahari. They have been the outright best cars as we see it. And although we've seen some pressure to Dahari, most notably on those restarts, not as much firepower once you get those green flag laps in, and specifically off this run, Keelan, where you have your first set of tires slapped onto the race car, so you've got cold tires in this race, and you got to deal with the differences in how it handles off of the run versus how it handles when you come freshly off of pit road. But it seems as though Eric Schaefer stepping up to the challenge. He's nearly putting up similar or faster lap times to Gabriel Dahari. So by the time we had a gap of about 0.6 of a second, it's down to half a second, 5 car lengths between those 2 Chevrolets.
Start to see Schaefer slowly close in on those top 2. First time he has really had somewhat clean air in front of Jaden Porter on a podium step to find some speed in that 33 as we look at how high up Baumann is running in that 14. You saw him bounce off the bumps right there in 1 and 2. It's so sketchy when you're running the very top side of the racetrack. He's going to run in that line I like around here, up on the top, around that top groove up there as we take a look at the 5 of Brandon makes trouble with Newbron. Duncan Paul in front of him. Paul will keep it under him.
What a save.
Oh, Schaefer's there. Yeah, Schaefer got loose off turn 4, lit up the rear tires, and he was pluming smoke right at the entry to turn 1. He was on the apron letting everyone through. A bit of left rear damage, but the 3rd place charging car is now all the way back in track position.
And here's the look to see what happened. He's on here. I got the angle here. Schaefer was running all by himself. He wasn't really under fire, and there you see just slides it off of turn 4, and it's a long slide. It never was too progressive. And there you see some hard contact to the inside wall, has some significant left rear damage, probably some suspension damage if I must suggest here, Kenneth. And He's going to limp it slowly around the pit lane, and right now he is still on the racetrack. He has not brought it down pit road at all, so he is running behind Austin Reedy right now. In the 23rd position is Eric Schaefer, obviously with some big damage on his race car, probably trying to limp it around to a caution and not lose a lap.
The Hampton, Virginia native in trouble, 66 laps in, and this is the same tail.
Oh, and he's wrecking off a turn 2. Big crash for Eric Schaefer.
Eric Schaefer spins, and he's hard into the wall. There's the yellow flag. And the Hampton, Virginia native has a car torn up. Off of turn 2, our caution flag waves, 67 laps in, and it's the former third-place car. Now with the race turning
he's done.
sour,
Look at the smoke.
It's over.
Yeah, you saw it live there where he went sideways through those bumps, and just with the damage he probably had to the suspension and the steering, it was going to be hard for him to keep that car going in the right direction eventually, and you're going to watch it right here going into turn 1. We've documented those bumps, how tricky they can be, and if you have a broken suspension or broken steering, that's going to make it all the more difficult. Right here, there's a bump at the end of the pit lane. You see a car jump right there, and it's getting sideways on him, and right there it just catches and nose head on into the inside retaining wall, and that's going to end his race prematurely, as we do have split strategies. Half the field is decided to pit, and another half has decided to stay out.
So there's another look at Eric Schaefer, but we'll try to get a look at exactly how things fare coming into pit road. Charlie Beyer, what do you have down there?
And this strategy has been split in half, led in by Gabriel Dahari from inside of the top 5. We're taking 4 fresh Goodyear tires here for these guys. That was about 30 laps on that last run, so we're going to see about 5 or more cars on the split strategy, led in and out by Gabriel Dahari in that 72. So this restart is going to bring a tire difference in terms of wear. You're going to have cold tires and pretty worn tires beating against each other.
So it's an interesting call. Keelan Belsha, Dahari, one of the stronger cars in this race, selecting for pit road. Is this a good decision here?
Not sure. It depends if you can get up to Hawken by the time the tires even out, really, in my opinion. I don't know if this saves you a pit stop. I'm not that good at math. I think you're still one stopping from last stop to end of the race anyway. So it's I don't think it saves you a pit stop. It's all about if you can make it up through the field and get around Hawken by the time that these tires are evened out, because we know that can happen. When the tires even out, lap times even out, and your gain becomes less and less effective the deeper you go into the run. So it's all about making up that track position, cutting through the field.
Well, Keelan, I think this is more so just to play on the tires. Tyler was telling us before the race that tires are going to matter more than fuel, so everybody still has to pit one time, but if you can have fresher tires up front and get yourself the track position, that could be all it takes, especially if we got rash of cautions. You stay out, keep the track position, and that could just win you the race. I mean, that's exactly what Brandon Hawkins done. He's played the track position game, and he's gotten them a couple of victories. So they're trying to see if they get a long enough run to get the track position for themselves, and then hope, hey, let's have a couple cautions here, and we keep it.
It's one of those things where you have the frequency of yellows, so track position matters a lot more than what you have building on strategy. How many times have we seen in these types of races where the yellow flags come out so much to the point where you may have gone down pit road and had maybe 15 lap or more fresher tires, but you can't carve your way through the field in enough time because you don't have green flag laps to put the work in. So you can't earn your money on the strategy, and so all these guys are electing to stay out. It is a total of approximately 15 cars that stay out. Christopher Bishop is the last car to remain out on the racetrack. Gabriel Dahari and everyone 16th on back have elected to come down pit road. That includes Jaden Porter, that includes AJ Green, who are some of those guys who fought for a top 3 spot and were dormant in the top 5 for most of this race. So it's Lawson Peel on the outside of the front row for the first time, and our next restart crossing the line at lap number 71. Brandon Hawken has led every single lap. Can he continue this time by with Craig Launslager and Trevor Haley to help back in row number 2? Green flag back in the air. Wonderful jump by the Canadian to turn 1.
As the leader, you definitely have a great opportunity to go up there and just take the lead away. as the tires are starting to make their way through the field. Dahari wasting no time getting around some of these cars. Jaden Porter struggle a little bit there in turn one, just making sure he doesn't get into the back of anybody. AJ Green trying to see if he can follow 72 through. Already 5 positions or so gained on this opening lap for Dahari, trying to see if he could get underneath Mikey Neal to get up into the 12th spot. Restarted in 18th, did that 72. Kenneth, he is making short work of this traffic, trying to see can he eventually get up to Brandon Hawken and take over the track position game.
The field is about 3 wide behind Dahari's Chevrolet as they try to siphon themselves out. Plenty of those guys in that threshold, the mixing point between the fresh and old tires. Dahari makes the move underneath. He's already stepped into the top 10. Now, does that spell trouble for all of those guys who have stayed out until now? There's a look on board from the 98 Chevrolet of Brandon Hawken, holding on from Lawson Peel by the tune of about 4 car lengths. But Keelan Belsha, Dahari, in that yellow and black Chevrolet is making moves on the bottom, and nobody is stopping him at the moment.
That's what he needs to do. Take advantage of these fresh tires and carve your way through the field and get up to the front as fast as you can while you still have this tire advantage, because you wouldn't sacrifice track position for nothing, and that is what he's doing, getting his way through the field inside of New Bra and now inside of Bauman for that position right there. And that 72 making his way through the field, the 48 of Green back there following him.
He is rolling. He is already up into the top 5. He is, Keelan, just getting past the 14 there. Still within about 2 seconds of your race leader, so he's hoping to get clean racetrack, put together some consistent laps without some traffic in front of him. Gets past Lautenschlager here. He'll clear for the 4th position here in 3 and 4, you'd expect, and he indeed does so already. So only Trevor Haley and Lawson Peel lay between himself and Brandon Hawkins, so give him some clean racetrack to work with. Expect that 72 to start closing the gap. You look a little bit further behind. AJ Green has kind of lost a little bit of ground touch to the 72. He's back now in 6th, just getting past Bauman himself, and Porter has struggled on this restart compared to the other guys. He is down in the 9th position, just battling Brandon Banks as now Dahari moves up into 3rd, getting past Trevor Haley.
Onboard look, Charlie Byer photography camera with Dahari as he steps into that 3rd spot. And remember the lap times as we see it, the difference 0.4 of a second to the benefit of Dahari, and all of those on the fresh rubber. And speak of it, it's only about 25 laps, 27 actually, that are on the difference between those at the front and Dahari, those rest of those tire takers from our last yellow flag of the race. So it is a pretty big difference, but 0.3 of a second, not that big of a discrepancy. You could argue that even though Dahari is cutting through this field, Keelan Belsha, he is saving a bit of that tire that he could relinquish for the rest of this race. He uses the middle in 1 and 2. He's got the nose up high to the outside of Lawson Peel to 2nd place in turn 3.
And look, AJ Green is back in 4th already, so he's starting to put a move on himself. Jaden Porter has gotten into 6th. He's gotten past Craig Lautenschlager. So now Dahari's now having to see if he can run down that 98. He hasn't been within half a second since one of these restarts of the 98, and these tires are definitely going to give him the best opportunity to do so, gaining at a rate of about 0.2 a lap. So expect it sometime in the next 5 laps to have a battle for the top position, as now AJ Green looks to move into the podium position. You look a little bit further back, Jaden Porter closing the gap on Trevor Haley to move into the top 5.
As he was around Lawson Peel here, Keelan, he found himself in trouble, but it was caused by Jaden Porter at the exit of turn 4. This time Green, on that similar strategy to Dahari, is making up the track position by the alternate route. Now you may entitle yourself to a possible green flag run here, but again, with the frequency of yellows, the question mark only continues to grow larger and larger, but Green is reaping the benefits, stepping into the podium for the 2nd time tonight.
It is definitely what these guys who have come down pit road are looking for. They are looking for a green flag run to really take advantage of these tires and hold that track position as long as possible, and that's what they want here. It would keep them up front as we see Dahari start to close in on the race leader, Brandon Hawkins. So far, nobody has been able to challenge, but with the tire difference so severe, it may be hard for Hawkins to hold him off.
Left side of your screen, Dahari Chevrolet. Right side, the look off the back of Brandon Hawkins' car. Wiggle loose in turn 2, and the approach is there for Dahari, cleared to take this race lead in the next several laps should Hawkins continue to flail away off turn 4. Dahari is there within a car length at lap 83.
Expect him to try to run a little bit higher than Hawkins here to get the run off the corner and move to the inside. It's what he's done to make most of these passes. He's going to try to get to the right rear. Hawkins going to leave him the space off the corner, so he's actually going to try his best to roll the outside here on the 98. They'll be side by side for the position here. Hawkins just doesn't have the grip, almost makes contact with Dahari. Dahari drifts up the track, but we have a new race leader for the first time tonight. Rookie Gabriel Dahari, in his first points-paying event, takes the top position.
Brandon Hawkins has led the last 83 laps, and Dahari finally crosses the line first to take his first laps led in his 4-wide career. And next up on the chopping block, AJ Green, the other car on the fresh tires, puncturing his way through the field. The only other car there, Jaden Porter back and forth, who's about a second or so behind AJ at this point of the run. The other drivers that did come down pit road haven't made that much progress. Duncan Fall in the 50 car just moved up into 8th and just passed the 14 of Nicholas Bauman in the Ford Mustang Dark Horse. Then you look back at Timothy Cook, who settles in 13th place and hasn't made moves. Cody Kinsey is back in 15th with not a progress in sight. And AJ Green makes the move on. Hawkins makes a move for second.
A little bit faster than Dahari is right now in that 48 as he continues to start to make progress, now slotting himself in second. And now here in front of Hawkins, this is a moment where you can kind of sit back, take a break, let that car breathe. You don't have to push as hard to make up the track position, save those tires, try to make this car last through the run. I'm sure that's what Green will be targeting right now in that 48 car.
It's going to be hard for him to save the tires, though, at least as much as he would want to, just seeing the cars catch up to him and pull away as down Jaden Porter's on his back bumper. He's going to have to do it. But let me tell you, from being in the driver's seat when cars just go by you like that, Kenneth, it is never a great feeling. You just want to try and push and go as fast as they are, especially if we keep running laps in this run, because he's just going to continue losing time. Those 25 to 30 laps under the green flag, the difference of these tire sets, it doesn't sound like a lot, but we know at a track that wears this much out, it never truly equalizes out again.
And remember, you can go approximately 85 or so laps on a tank of fuel, but you cannot go that length on tires. And if you do, you may be in a really precarious spot, Keelan, because we've already seen how cold tires and relatively fresh tires, it doesn't save you from a spin off turn 4 or some trouble in the middle of the corner via that very nasty bump, center of turns 1 and 2. So you run 85 laps on a set of Goodyear Eagles, and it's good luck to you with the sets that you could waste on pit road. But, I mean, this is going to be part of the process, right, for Hawkins and for Lawson Peel, all of those guys who stayed out. They understand they will be at a deficit to those guys who are patrolling the field and controlling the rhythm right now, but it's not necessarily the dying call yet. Still a long way to go in tonight's race.
It is. There is a long way to go, and everybody's going to have to hit pit road again. And but the way this run is shaping up, if we get another 15, 20 laps under our belt before we get a caution, I mean, everybody's going to come down. So it's hard to predict for Hawkins right now when that strategy would work out to give him the track position back. It'll take a second. They're going to have to hit pit road before the guys like Green and Dahari have to hit pit road. So that's where it'll play into their favor. They'll get a little bit of track position there, but it's a small window of opportunity right there. So it really has played into the favor of the 72 and the 48 and everybody who has pit and made up that track position. It's really worked out well for them.
Oh, there on that replay on the bottom right, the moment Lawson Peel had as soon as Duncan Fall rode up to him, just stacking the air on his rear, got the 12 sideways, gives him the position. The 12 is able to recover. He is down now in 6th place with Craig Lautenschlager not too far behind him. And looking at this top 5, 4 of those cars in the top 5 currently, Kenneth, are cars that made their way onto pit road. And just look at this. There's a couple lap cars in front of race leader Gabriel Dahari. That includes the 35 of Tristan Bailey. A little bit further ahead is, I believe, the 66 of Zach Hill that they're going to catch as well. Hill did a great job coming back on the lead lap as the yellow flag is going to wave. Brandon Banks is in trouble in turn 2.
Brandon Banks, who has 2 top 4s here at Iowa, is a hard hit to the right front of his Chevrolet. Caution flag out, 94 laps in, and that is a torn-up Brandon Banks car. Unfortunately, could not get there. Lance Hill, who has seemingly been involved in almost everything tonight, escaping with minimal damage, does so again, and it's Hawkins that leads it until he loses. Dahari with the race lead. And this leads to our most recent caution flag. It appeared it started there, Keelan Belsha, with Lance Hill in the 1, was super slow off of turn 2. And as soon as Brandon Banks was emerging into the foreground with Timothy Cook, that's where the problems ensued.
Yeah, just nowhere to go in that situation. And we looked way up at Hill, ripping that seam right there, and just lost the race car, slides down to the bottom and kind of parks it nowhere for Banks to go. But that is a couple guys right there who cannot afford runs like this. Banks, without a win, sitting 5 points out of the playoff battle. The game inside of the game for Lance Hill, he's already got that win locked down, but he needs to make 5 more starts, and he's 7 points back from the 30th place battle in points right there. So he's going to have to work on that. Down to Charlie Byer on pit road.
And all but 2 drivers come into pit lane, led in and out by Gabriel Dahari, the driver who was the beginning of that split strategy, along with AJ Green, Jaden Porter. They both broke off and did that split strategy. They come off the first 3 off of pit road. But Lance Hill and Timothy Cook being one of the drivers on the split strategy, stayed out. Lance Hill, almost 50 laps on his tank and his tires. Actually, they're both going to come in here. So that'll cycle Gabriel Dahari. AJ Green will be the front 2 come to this restart.
Thank you, Charlie. We'll keep an eye on the strategy as it unfolds, but with this caution, it does level everyone out. However, there is going to be a tire set difference again, as we mentioned with Brandon Hawken, Lawson Peel, all of those guys who just came down pit road after a relatively lengthy run. And then Dahari, Green, Porter, I mean, they went on a pretty short run, and now it's down on to what kind of tire sets will be left for the rest of this race as everyone decided their different causes on what they can do. But how impressive, Francisco, has Gabriel Dahari been? Fastest in practice earlier on tonight through the session. Second best to Brandon Hawken until this strategy alternatively unfolded for him. And Dahari, in his first ever start, is making waves in his first race.
I think we have to quickly jump over here to Charlie Byer. As I'm hearing an issue on the 12 car. Lawson Peel is dropping back, letting cars go. Possible pit road penalty here for Lawson Peel.
We had a 14.3 second stop, and it does appear like a pit road speeding penalty dealt to the Columbus, Mississippi native. So for the first time, Peel will have to work from the back. Not something he hasn't done before. He started 17th in the Season 5 race here and ended up walking away with the victory. The only driver in Iowa 4-wide history to have started the race outside the top 10 and won the going. The other 2, Craig Lautenslager and Brandon Hawkins, started the race inside the top 5, and they never left that perspective on the way to the victory. Lawson Peel, with that penalty, though, will drop all the way back to 19th place.
And we have it.
Gabriel Dahari, the race leader on the outside of row 1. AJ Green, who stepped up here on the last run under Green, will try and take the lead for the first time on the inside of the row. Brandon Hawken, Jaden Porter going to sit 3rd and 4th, waiting for any moves to be made. First proper restart where Brandon Hawken is not in control. This time it's the rookie. Green flag back in the air, and it's a bobble of a start by the Clemens, North Carolina native. We're 3 wide entering turn 1.
And Hawkins going to be the winner in all of this because he's going to roll the outer lane to try and get some momentum past AJ Green. Watch this 98 get the run off of turn 2. He might just clear AJ Green going into turn 3, and he does. The 98 now back up into P2.
AJ Green, the current driver of the 48, and Jaden Porter, the former driver of the 48. Now they do battle at the exit of turn 4. Porter has the entryway to the inside in turn 1, does not unleash the move, and it looks like AJ Green going to the high skies of the banking, trying his best to get a run off the second corner on Hawken down the straightaway. Unsuccessful. Everyone top 5 single file. And look who stepped into the spotlight, Keelan Belsha. BBR rookie Duncan Fall is in the mix from 5th place.
We talked about him earlier, Kenneth. This has been a guy who has been up front late in these races throughout the season as it has progressed. He had a little bit of trouble earlier in the race, lost the track position from under him, but he has climbed his way all the way up to 5th right now, and that 50 car is looking good, trying to make a move on his teammate Jaden Porter right out his windshield. That would be for 4th.
And the first time we see Fall inside the top 5, hasn't necessarily had a strong finish in his short 4-wide stint after he's crashed out of several races that he's attempted throughout season number 7. And hopefully tonight will be the silver lining for Fall's Toyota Camry. Still the only Toyota inside the top 10 as we see it, as he continues to run fit. There's a look at second place Brandon Hawken, who is slowly but surely reeling in Dahari. Last lap time was nearly identical, but the lap before, Hawken was about a tenth faster than Dahari Chevrolet. And again, it goes back to the difference in lines. While Hawken has been so loyal to the inside lane, Dahari has been more willing to switch things up. More of a middle driver in 1 and 2, and then running down low in 3 and 4. And here's a look on board from the Canadian trying to catch up.
You can see the different things that they're trying to do here to try and either keep the position if you're Dahari or advance this position if you're Hawkins, whether it's peaking lower, running a little bit higher to get some kind of a run off the corner. That's when it really becomes a chess match, especially with the dirty air these cars have.
And it's all about whether Hawken can make the move to the bottom. He's nearly there. He's got to look to the inside momentarily. Can he get the side draft completed? He cannot. So the Racing Prodigy Camaro will make him move back in second, and Dahari will hold on to his defense. But how long will it last? Hawken is still there, heading to turn 1.
You see, you're always going to drift up to 72.
He's going to look down low again, and much like Chicagoland, a tough place to pass on the inside because of all those bumps and how much you have to lay out the throttle in the corner. You may have to resort to physicality, using the bumper in the center of the area, the apex, to make a move. Bit of a wiggle out of 4 by Dahari. Peeking to the inside, Hawken for the race lead.
Able to wheel in 1 and 2. It's going to be about who can get the advantage off the corner, and I think that's going to go to Dahari for now. And we talked about it earlier. It's going to take maybe a couple laps of wrapping the bottom to make a move to the race lead. And almost a bit of contact right there as Hawken washed up center of the corner, bounced his car up. They're going to stay side by side in 1. Dahari by an inch at the line that time. They get a wider entrance into the corner, and it's the same story we saw a lap ago as they continue to stay side by side down the back.
Impressive that Hawken's able to control the inside lane and stay with Dahari. You'd see often the pinching in the middle of the corner can force the inside car out of it, but Hawken is gaining at the apex and has a nose ahead, will lead lap 107 just by an inch, barely over Gabriel Dahari into turn 1. And Dahari will have the advantage here in 1 and 2 once again. But as they battle, take a look back at third, AJ Green, and then fourth place, Jaden Porter, waiting in the ranks, a possible chance to make a move as they continue to slow down, battling for the first spot. More contact off turn 4.
AJ Green is absolutely loving this back in P3 as they stay side by side for position. He continues to close the gap. Oh, and a send by Hawken. He's sideways. He goes up and he washes up into the marbles.
He goes into the wall. Dahari takes the lead. Will second place be given up? Yes. AJ Green down low, and in one fell swoop, a small mistake by the Canadian sends him back 2 positions.
We don't normally see those kind of mistakes from Brandon Hawken, and we just saw a rare time where he was being over-aggressive. Tried to send in to clear Dahari, as actually Green's now going to get sideways.
Green's in front of Hawken, gets sideways to the apron, and he saves it. As everyone continues off turn 2, the mistakes are creeping up by the main drivers at the front, and Dahari enjoys the scenic view, 0.7 of a second to Hawken right behind him, Keelan.
That's a big gap out to the race lead, probably the biggest we've this evening for that 72. He's got several car lengths in between him and the 98 after the 98 had that mistake, but he's going to try to not let that get to him and slowly close in on that gap again. In here with a little over 60 laps to go. It has been those two having class of the field one way or the other, whether it's been Hawken leading or Dahari leading. These two have been the fastest guys as Jaden Porter sits back there in third.
Let's see if we can get a look at the bottom right of your screen as to what happened with Hawken and Dahari as they were side by side. Hawken had the advantage momentarily. They were still even in the entry to turn 1. And I don't know whether Francisco Hawken just decided, I'm going to use the slide job, but he goes way high off turn 2, gets into the marbles, kisses the outside wall, and it doesn't send him a letter of approval. He loses second place here as AJ Green moved by, and then about a lap or so next, he ended up in a mistake to Charlie Byer down pit road.
Hey guys, back from the pit lane as we settle into this long green flag one run, lap number 113 out of 176. Like I said, pre-race, a full tank of fuel, is going to be about 80 to 85 laps, and these guys are about 19 laps on those tires, just restarting just prior to the 100 lap mark. So, guys, this could be a close one. If you save a bit of fuel and you really put effort into your tank and stretching as far as you can, you might be able to get all the way to the end, but if these guys are definitively going to stop one more time, I can definitely see them splitting the run or running all the way to an empty tank. If they split the run in half, it'll be about lap 140. If we run the full tank, it'll be about lap 160, 170. That's only about less than a dozen laps away from the checkered. So I'm interested to see what these guys do. Again, that's barring any yellows.
It's close to the contest. Thank you, Charlie. We'll keep an eye on that as we roll forward through this race. Francisco Bacalhau, your thoughts on this, just because we had
Austin Reedy with the spin on the backstretch.
Austin Reedy in trouble, it appears. Yes, he's under the apron. No yellow flag. Will stay green.
Let's see if we can get a replay and see what happened to Austin Reedy, because that was almost another caution flag that we got. As Charlie was talking about the pit strategies there, that would have given everybody the chance to make it back. Here's Reedy. This was for position on AJ Green. You see, Green actually got sideways, and there was contact between him and Reedy just spins off the racing surface, meaning no caution.
So as this race has progressed, Keelan, it feels like we've seen a difference in the trouble zone, right? Earlier in this race, we had turn 4, everybody watching for, and it appeared all of our cautions came from that specific area of the racetrack, but now it's turn 2. Lance Hill and company creating one of our most recent yellows, and AJ Green, who had mistaked off of turn 4 and lost second place to Brandon Hawken. Actually, off of turn 2 is where he made that mistake. Finds himself in another situation, this time with Austin Reedy.
It's the treacherous racetrack all the way around, Kenneth. We've been talking about it all night long. It's just one of those where you can't nail all of it, and if you do, you're going to win the race. And I mean, it's such a hard track to nail on both sides. We've seen trouble out of 4, and the second they start focusing on 4, they let their guard down off of turn 2. So it's a very tricky racetrack to just hot lap by yourself, and then you put all these guys that you're racing on the racetrack with you. It just makes it that much harder, and it has been proving to be difficult for some of these guys.
There's a look at Lawson Peel, bottom right of your screen. Remember, he took a trip to the back of the field and restarted 19th after his pit road
AJ Green
penalty.
also went for a spin.
And AJ Green now spinning on the racetrack. Is that a yellow flag? No, we're going to stay green again. And it's a similar situation to Austin Reedy. Finds trouble in turn 2, and his night has gone from bad to worse.
Yeah, very similar to Austin Reedy. Just spins off the racing surface there and able to keep it collected. Now he finds himself just in front of Dahari, trying to hold on to a lead lap position. He is battling Zach Hill and Austin Reedy for that. So it's just 3 cars immediately in front of Gabriel Dahari.
So he goes for a spill off turn 2. So does Austin Reedy. The yellow flag in both cases does not fly. Race control says it's under the racing line, so it's none of my business. We stay green with 55 laps to go. Look at the wonderful battle here for 10th place as we check in with the Columbus, Mississippi native of Lawson Peel. Slow progress at the beginning of this run, Keelan, but +9 already up to, now +10 actually, up to P9 as he settles on the racetrack. A solid recovery for the champ of this series back in season number 4. And then Tristan Bailey, Michael Newbraw facing troubles of their own throughout this race, also making a potent comeback drive.
Our first caution flag of the day was brought out by that 35 car spinning through the grass. And a good recovery drive for Tristan Bailey, a part-time effort this year. Last week was in the open when he got spun around and has continued to have that trend going tonight at Iowa, but he has done a good job driving his way through the field. This feels like one of the longer races on the schedule, Kenneth, because it's 176 laps. I mean, I think that's probably the highest number on the schedule, so it feels like a long one, and for these drivers, that's what it feels like. It's a lot of opportunities if you mess up early to climb your way through the field, and that's what he's been doing.
And then you look at the car right behind him sitting 11th. That is Michael Newbraw, who entering this race was over 10 points away from the cut line driver who held the last spot in the playoffs, Tony Kivitt. And as Tony Kivitt is not exactly in this race tonight, Newbraw has been able to take advantage with some of the troubles from his teammate Brandon Banks getting into a crash earlier on in the night. And through just consistency and a bit of strategy alone, Newbraw has been able to stay up front in this main pack. And although he's lost the fight against Tristan Bailey, he's doing a wonderful job at pushing through the points. And that's something, Francisco, that Christopher Bishop told us earlier in that pre-race interview as one of those other drivers sitting around that playoff cut line bubble, is staying consistent, taking it track by track and surviving. The biggest key of note for him before this race and the latter half of the regular season started. It appears Newbraw is taking the pages from his book and is using it to perfection. One of the most consistent guys we've seen all night long.
And know how to survive, Kenneth. The key to it is picking and choosing your battles. You can't just go out there and race every single guy like you're Ryan Newman, realistically speaking anyways. Eventually, if you do that, you might make an enemy or you get involved in some kind of contact or another. As AJ Green gets into the wall there, continuing his trouble turn to this evening as Mikey Neal slides up in front of Bauman, almost goes around in front of Bauman. Some close racing here for P6. But to finish up my point there, you have to pick and choose your battles, know what you're racing, who you're racing, and that generally will get you some consistent enough finishes if you stay out of trouble, if you avoid the crashes, and eventually the points will start rewarding themselves when other guys find themselves into issues.
And there's a look at our all-star winner, Nicholas Bauman, back in that Freightliner Ford Mustang. The first time we see this Cascadia paint scheme on his Ford Mustang Dark Horse, and has been one of those drivers that has stayed high up the racetrack, as in that fight with Mikey Neal for position number 6. As they get around the lap car, Lance Hill, the Trackhouse Chevrolet on the inside, nearly collected in an incident. Both of them did about a lap or two ago, but Bauman has done a solid job of stepping into the top 6 and making this work. And he told us a couple of weeks ago how big that all-star win was, even if it didn't mean much for the overarching storyline of the playoffs and making it with a locked-in win. Bauman just considered the fact that this was big-time momentum gain for Dark Horse Motorsports and himself as a rookie driver. You know, Juan Escamilla and Trevor Haley have done a wonderful job throughout this season, getting through some of those hurdles. And as Bauman sits 52 points above the cut line in 10th, those bonus points from Las Vegas certainly helped Keelan.
Yeah, it certainly did. When you're above the cut line like that, and you're trying to make a push for the playoff, the all-star win with the bonus points he got knocked him all the way up to 52 to the good right now. So he's looking solid. That is what he needed, a good momentum booster like that, because the all-star race, it's the halfway point in the regular season, kind of where we marked it, and it can turn your season entirely around. So that is something Nicholas Bauman took to his advantage, and he's running well today.
And there's a look at Lawson Peel settling into 7th. Just got around Mikey Neal, so whatever Bauman's dealing with now, he's got an Exalta Chevrolet creeping up in the rearview mirror within the next several laps. Distance between them sits at about 1 second and 2/10. But Peel is putting in some considerably fast laps. Was a little slower than Bauman last time by, but seems to be relatively okay. I believe we just had a problem there with Craig Parks, Francisco, on the inside of turn 2, sitting in 20th.
Looks like the same thing as a couple of other guys I've had. Just gets loose into turn 1, and not nearly as extreme. You see slides there, and he's able to use the apron to save the race car, locks it down, and keeps it pointed in the right direction. So turn 1, clearly, as this race is going, it's catching several people off guard.
So the bumps are killing the drivers at the bottom end of the racetrack, and we continue to stay green. All of those situations in that second corner of the racetrack, all of them results in a trip down the banking into the apron, and if there is a spill of considerable note, it is underneath that yellow line. So race control forbids throwing the yellow flag at this juncture of the race. There's Gabriel Dehari leading this race as of lap number 134. Brandon Hawken about 4/10 back, and so it is a relatively consistent run by both of them, but they are, Keelan, approaching a ton of lap traffic. This is where Dehari is tested in his debut race. If he can get through all of these drivers and make a move, it can definitely put Hawken on the back foot, but the other way around is that Hawken catches up and makes a charge at the top spot should Dehari find some trouble up the road.
Yeah, we have seen lap traffic make or break a guy's race. Most recently, we kind of saw it at Darlington when it was a Jaden Porter and Brandon Hawken race. Lap traffic kind of played a factor in that one, and once they got around him, they wrecked behind them to cause the only caution of that race. So it can certainly throw a wrench in your plans, especially in these next-gen cars with how aero-dependent they are. You get stuck in a dirty air of a lap car's wake, it can really play an effect on the leader and the guy on second, depending how fast the leader can get around them and makes a move. So it's an opportunity for the Hari and an opportunity for Hawk. And this lap traffic, it can play a big factor with 40 laps to go.
Still a lot of time, though, to make a move. If you're Brandon Hawken, you're waiting in the ranks. But how many times have we seen him in this situation, catching up to a driver in front? Steven Maggio, that rings a bell. You also look at Jaden Porter at Darlington. That also rings another bell in the effort to catch up. We'll see if he can make a move. Keelan, do you have a bit of information? Do you have something to tell us right now at this juncture?
I might, Kenneth. I'm curious how far back your KBRN Iowa mind reaches back.
Okay. What do you got?
What's the first KBRN Iowa race, if you remember?
I believe our first Iowa race, it might have been the Bungeon Lawn Care Series, right?
It may have been. I'm not sure if it was or not. I'm going to assume it was.
Oh, I thought you knew the answer. I thought...
Okay.
No, that wasn't it. That wasn't it.
Okay.
I
think I know.
Who finished fifth in that race?
So the first answer's right. And it was the Bungeon Lawn Care Series race. Okay.
I'm gonna assume that's the oldest I remember.
Because
it was June 2020.
Okay, because if it's not the Bungeon Lawn Care Series, it has to be the TRL iRacing Series from this track.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. I'm talking about the Bundy race, though. Who finished fifth in that one?
Who finished fifth? Well, it's Iowa.
You know him very well.
I believe Blaze McKinney won this race.
You know this guy really well, Kenneth.
I know him really well.
Really well.
Is it Charlie
Parker
Byer?
White?
No.
Oh.
Good guess.
Oh.
Good guess.
Okay. All right.
Is mine any worth it? I said Parker White.
Oh, guys, I'm right here.
Oh.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Wow. We missed the ball.
Fuel mileage race.
A little self-doot there.
It was a fuel mileage race, Kenneth, and that was my first appearance on KBRN besides that failed Mexico Kansas ARCA broadcast. It was my first appearance. I got interviewed, and I was so nervous. I got interviewed that day.
Wow.
That was great. Iowa.
I'm surprised.
Good Iowa
Wow.
memory.
I missed the ball there. That's completely my bad. But did Blaze McKinney win that race? I want to see if I get at least a small win here.
I couldn't tell you. It just struck me today that was my first KBRN appearance. I fuel mileage my way into a top 5 at Bundy in Iowa, and you interviewed me. It was pretty electric.
Well, that's awesome. I want to go back in the memory lane a little bit just because, all of us are key members of the KBueno Racing Network as there's a near spinner off turn 2. We're going to identify who exactly that was, but single car there on the back straightaway causes no yellow with around 33 laps to go. I want to go back into this because everybody in this booth right now, from the main booth to pit road, everyone has had an instrumental part in KBRN's growth, and all of them had a factor in 2020. So Charlie was our first producer at KBRN back when I had a computer that wasn't worth anything at all to stream any sort of iRacing broadcast. We tried that Trexco Kansas race, and it was absolutely awful. We had to shut that one nearly halfway through, or less than halfway through. And then at that point, Charlie produced a lot of our shows. Then Keelan jumped in, like you said, with that Iowa race. And then Francisco had been a part of the booth since TRL at the Daytona Road Course, which is his first career iRacing broadcast with KBRN. So kind of fun to see everyone involved in that as Duncan Fall makes a move on Jaden Porter. Francisco, you've got some info on a bunch of drivers starting to stretch the strategy with under 30 laps to go next time.
Yeah, thanks to our pit reporter, Charlie Byer, we found out that not everybody can get to the end of the race on the tank of fuel from their last pit stop, which means that green flag pit stops could be inevitable. Some guys may try to run it all the way, hoping that a caution, just in case if it comes out, that they're protected and stay on the lead lap, but some of these guys may try to make their way into the pit lane, take advantage of fresh tires, and really make up some serious ground as teammates Porter and Fall now continue to race for P3, all while losing time to your race leader. Charlie, you have any more information?
We'll see if we can touch with Charlie Byer later on in the show. There's Jaden getting around Duncan Fall in the battle for third, but if Curtis Kelly has just hit pit road, that means we've got possible situations for the leaders. And we know that Jaden is apparently saving at this juncture of the race, and they have lost so much time to Craig Lounslager and Nicholas Bauman, and a brush off of the banking there from Lounslager gets him high off of turn 2. Jaden Porter gets a bobble that loses him P number 3, and it's an absolute hornet's nest from third on back.
I'm watching the onboard. He's not clutching at Kenneth, but just based off the RPMs and listening to the race car, he is waiting so long to get onto the throttle. Watch the RPMs there. Oh, he's actually going to get sideways, and oh, no, crash.
And sideways up into the wall is Nicholas Baumann on 2 wheels. Yellow flag is out, and up and over goes Baumann.
Shades of Colin Forrester from Bristol.
And the car is on its roof by itself, stranded, and he tows it to pit lane in unbelievable fashion. Jaden Porter just got loose in the center of 1 and 2, catches Nicholas Baumann, and it's an hellacious crash in the corner while Baumann was manning the outside. We'll get a better look at this one to cause our most recent yellow flag. And remember, Porter and Fall in their battle for position 3 stacked everyone up, and I don't know what happened there, Keelan, with Porter. It looked like the car just lost all grip coming up the banking.
These tires are getting worn, Kenneth. We have to remember that these tires are losing whatever grip that they did have. They're pushing tight or breaking loose. I mean, anything that could possibly happen. Porter, he was just sideways getting into that corner to begin with. Looked like he may have wheel hopped a little bit on a bump right there and just got Baumann caught up in a pretty aesthetically pleasing flip right there. And down on pit road with Charlie Byer.
Guys, this is the money stop. This will be the last definitive pit stop to get you to the end of the race. It's led by Gabriel Dahari. This is Brandon Hawkins' chance. Although, if he has a consistent pit stop and starts second, he will start on the front row on a restart with just about 25 laps to go. But he wants to be that control car. The other question is, will any of these drivers take 2 tires? We're going to see when that left-hand jack drops, and the number 72 is going to lead him out. It's a close race, but that number 98 is coming out second.
Go ahead, Charlie.
Go ahead, back to you, Kenneth.
No, it looked like it was a foot race off pit road. Didn't want to cut you off there. Apologize for that. But Gabriel Dahari wins the race off of pit lane. Hawkins second. Duncan Fall in a race-high third. Craig Laumslager and Tristan Bailey now wrap up the rest of the top 5 with 25 laps to go. Charlie, any other additional thoughts from pit road on the strategy?
Well, there's no drivers who stayed out and no drivers who took 2 tires. So I think a lot of these guys are going to be on the same page here, coming to less than 25 laps to go. But you're right, Kenneth. That is the money stop. You want to put yourself in the best position possible. So we got that 72 first, Brandon Hawkins second, Duncan Fall, and that number 13 of Craig Landslager. That'll make up your first 2 rows in this restart. That'll probably be the 2 drivers you see the most of come towards the end of this race.
Well, you do know this means we're going to have about 20 laps to go in this run, so I don't think tire saving is going to be at the utmost value here. We saw Dahari and Hawken be some of the faster cars on short runs, with the 72 being the leader in this case. That should give him the advantage on the initial jump. We'll see what Hawken could do, especially after their most recent battle. We saw Hawken dive it deep into turn 1, miss turn 1, and lost 2 positions in the process. So does the same thing happen? Do they race even more aggressively? We'll just have to sit and watch. And how about Duncan Fall? What a race he's having. He's up to P3. He's in a podium spot. If anything happens to the top 2, he's in prime position to take over. Tristan Bailey in 5th. Michael Newbraw in the number 6 up inside this top 10. What a great effort there for Michael Newbraw. And Austin Reedy, an incredible recovery from all his troubles tonight, runs in P9.
So it's a stacked top 10 as we get the field doubled up for a restart inside at 21 laps to go. Gabriel Dahari in his debut 4-wide race with a chance to win. If he can do so tonight, he would be the 3rd driver just this season to win a race in his debut. Steven Maggio did it first at Auto Club. Kyle Tursag did it next at the virtual Bristol Motor Speedway. We haven't seen it happen since, but we've had an historic season to count thus far. Dahari could add his name to the historic list of first-time winners in this stacked series. Dahari the race leader, Brandon Hawken in 2nd to react to the restart. Duncan Fall and Craig Laumslager sitting back in 3rd and 4th. We've seen row 2 have virtually no effect on the restart, only the leader with the advantage to the green flag. Sluggish on the inside is Duncan Fall, but Gabriel Dahari takes the field to the restart to turn 1, Keelan.
He's going to get clear, race down into 1, wrap the middle. See if Hawken can close any off of 2. Dahari got close to the fence. Hawken slows down to about a half car length going into 3. He now takes a look through the middle, try to get a better exit than the 72. trying to make a move. He tank slaps the wall right there. Might open up the door. The 98's going to take a peek to the inside.
Last time Hawken was in this position, he bottled the corner. This time it's a little more of a stable approach to the inside. And as Dahari floats up near the Iowa Speedway banner at the outside wall, the Canadian is underneath. The Sucker Punch Chevrolet tries to puncture to the inside. No avail, and we're still side by side to the stripe.
And further back, 3 wide action. Lawson Peel was in the middle of some 3 wide with Austin Reedy, who's diving it on the inside. Some intense racing going on in the back end of the top 5. Your leaders remain side by side and pulling away from third place runner Duncan Fall in the process.
It's a mirror image of earlier in this race when Hawken was down low. Dahari had to fend off this Chevrolet on the high side. They nearly make contact, rising off the banking. And the last time we were in this situation, Keelan Belsha, third place AJ Green, had a front row seat of the action. This time it is rookie Duncan Fall, still ways back, about 8/10 away from Brandon Hawken in second place, but still a viable opportunity should these two tangle inside 19 to go.
I think we need to see some tension out of these guys. These two have raced each other so clean all night long. As the sun starts to set here in Newton, Iowa, they have been pinching each other a little bit, and that was a big pinch by Dahari there going into the entry of the corner, trying to cut him off and park the bus. Couldn't quite do it, and we're right back to where we were. Hawken still at that quarter panel. Side draft, not as much of a factor here at these short tracks as it would be at those intermediates, but it could keep him up there with them. As Dahari gets a good exit, he'll get out to about a car length lead going into 1.
And once more, Francisco, no success for Hawken on the inside. He hasn't been able to move up the racetrack to pass Dahari, who has been so prominent in that middle lane to play defense. What do you do now?
Well, I mean, he has to try what Eric Schaefer did earlier. We saw Schaefer use the very outside in 3 and 4 to help generate a potential path moving in the right direction. So if Hawken's able to try something on the outside, that maybe that could work, but we know the 72 is not just going to hand it to him. He is going to force Hawken to get around him using the inside. He is not going to lose this race by giving Hawken the top.
The onboard look from Dahari on the left, Hawken chasing through the right side. And in the background, the purple Toyota of Duncan Fall, followed by Austin Reedy, who has crashed twice tonight, involved in 2 separate incidents, most recently off turn 2 into the inside wall. And what a recovery drive it has been for the Delaware native. And again, Hawken pushes forward on the inside. He's adamant at getting the top spot, but to 15 laps to go, does he have anything left in the tank for Dahari?
He's definitely going to have to try something different at some point. If the inside's just not working. There he goes. He's going to look to the outside. He's going to get to the right rear. Can he stay there? No, he can't.
And another push. Hawken this time tried the outside, so it appears, Keelan, he's making a different move, and he's electing this strategy in 3 and 4, arcing it up high and then going down low. It's working for the Canadian, but again, still no proper move, and his best shot has been entry turn 1. If you're Hawken here, what do you try? And if you're Dahari, is there anything left you could do on defense?
I think Dahari's playing perfect defense right now, putting his car in front of Hawken and being kind of unpredictable here, whether he's running the middle or running the bottom, being pretty unpredictable, and it's not helping Hawken. If I'm Hawken, I like that move to the outside that we saw on 1 and 2. A couple laps back where he got to the quarter panel. It probably would have worked if he didn't light up the tires a little bit, but there he's going to take a big arc down to the bottom in 3 and 4. Can he keep the power down and stay side by side? That was a great move by Hawken. I didn't know if it would stick. He's going to dive in there deep sideways through 3 and 4. Dahari with a run off the corner to maintain the race lead. Just picture perfect defense from that 72.
Dahari is masterclassing this race at the end. It'll be 11 laps to go next time by, and despite all of this tussle, Duncan Fall has not been able to catch up in third. Austin Reedy is slowly reeling the rookie in, and the chances are falling short for Brandon Hawken, who a couple of months ago has had this situation happen to him plenty of times. Chicagoland, where he was chasing Steven Maggio, couldn't get that one to fall. Darlington Speedway, where he got to Jaden Porter, and as Porter nudged him in the way for 3 and 4, got by with a bump and run. Hawken could not respond from there, and plenty of chances to make a move, especially at the entry of turn 1. And here he is again, fighting for the race lead with a younger driver, with a driver who's had less experience in this series, and is still struggling to get by. The dirty air so strong at this juncture of the race. There is Austin Reedy finally making a brush at Duncan Fall. That will be for the podium spot, and here comes Hawken again to the inside.
He's not giving up. He's definitely trying to make that bottom work as there's almost contact with the 72 off of turn 4. This is going to continue going down to the wire now, 9 laps to go. Kenneth, I think Hawken is going to keep mounting this pressure, and as the laps continue to wind down, the 72's played great defense, but he looks vulnerable off of turn 2 in particular. As the laps continue to wind down, that's going to mount more and more pressure on him to be perfect, to hold on for this win. Can someone with, as a rookie like he does, if he gets loose in front of Hawken, Hawken has nowhere to go but to his rear bumper. They'll be side by side going into 1.
Hawken catches the quarter panel of Dahari's Chevrolet. He'll make the move underneath. Can he get through the bumps in enough time to beat Dahari off the corner? He can't. They nearly make contact, and they're still side by side down the back straightaway.
Hawken's been doing great putting his car in position to make a move, but Dahari's been doing even better at playing defense up near the fence right there. Got really close to slapping the fence, and that probably would have killed all the momentum he has. This track, with how bumpy it is and how hard it is to get the power down off the corner without spinning that race car out, these two guys are doing a great job staying right on top of each other. Their telemetry is probably mirroring each other's for the most part, as it is just such a hard track to get around, and they are racing each other really well right now. Very clean, have seen very little contact. This is just great racing.
Hawken's attempt, this time possibly negated for the billionth time at this juncture. There's Austin Reedy peeking underneath Duncan Fall in the fight for third. That's continuous. Hawken falls back to single file action behind the race leader Dahari, who will this time see 5 laps to go from the virtual Iowa Speedway. And like you said, Francisco, he's been picture perfect from here on out. But does Hawken spoil the photo to the inside in turn 1?
We've seen the mistake Hawken made earlier in the race in this exact same situation. Does that change his approach to what he has to do to get around the 72? And at what point does he just become desperate and make some kind of a desperation move to win this race with now 4 laps to go?
And at a short track, Keelan, you can never count out the possibility of the chrome bumper. Does he use it in these final 4 to get by Dahari? Here he is again.
I don't know. We know Hawken as such a clean racer. I don't know if he would or not, but you got to be getting a little bit frustrated. For 20 laps you have been fighting to get around the 72 and haven't been able to make it happen. Been to the inside, haven't been able to really make a move to the outside, but you can watch his hands as he comes off of turn 3 and 4, how hard he is sawing at that wheel. Little sideways on entry right there for the 98. He went in there really deep to try to get the speed on entry. Dahari is going to get the exit on him, might have him clearing on the backstretch, and now into 3 and 4. It's going to come back to 2 circuits to go. Hawken trying everything he can to get around the 72. We'll see if it's enough. There's 2 more laps.
And there, Francisco, in turns 1 and 2, Hawken coughed up a bit of a mistake. You saw a bit of tire tracking there in the middle of the corner. That's where Hawken had stepped
That's a great
out.
rotation
He's
right
back
here.
To the inside, though. He is not giving up. Coming to the white flag in 3 and 4 this time.
He has just a few opportunities to make something happen. There's contact. There's contact back in Hawken sideways. He hangs onto it. He still might have an opportunity. White flag in the air. Duncan Fall waiting in third in case anything happens as the 72 sideways.
Over 20 laps of these two going at it. Duncan Fall is now peeking into the curtains from third place. Is there anything left that Brandon Hawken can unleash in the final 2 corners? He's up high, looking down low, but for the first time, it's Gabriel Dahari, debut race, and a race win.
And the run to the line for third. Fall holds off Austin Reedy to capture his best finish of his career so far. And you saw it right there in turn 4, Kenneth. The 72 protected the bottom, was not willing to give Hawken that line, and that forced Hawken to do something different, probably unexpected, and he just sealed off any crossover attempt. Basically, the perfect defense for the final corner.
Gabriel Dahari in his first points-paying 4-wide start gets a hard-earned victory from Iowa Speedway and is the 3rd driver in Season 7 to win in his first career race, following the tracks of Kyle Tursack at Bristol and Steven Maggio at the Auto Club Speedway. For the first time in his career, Gabriel Dahari joins the winners in Paul's Setup Shop, Victory Lane from Newton, Iowa. And Brandon Hockenkielen gave it all that he got. You got to give him credit for racing Dahari clean. And for the vice versa in that situation, Dahari gave it 110%, all that he could offer to Hocken on defense, and it works out in his favor. Over 20 laps of green flag side-by-side racing, and they didn't let anyone else play spoiler. It was just mano-a-mano till the end, and Dahari proves his worth in his first race.
Yeah, that was spectacular right there. Congratulations to Dahari. I'm really glad they got to run that thing green all the way, because we have seen so many times when guys get desperate late, we have a yellow, we have an overtime finish, but they were nice today. Let them run the last 20 or so laps, green flag, all over each other. Great racing. I'm curious to hear what these guys have to say, and I don't know what Hawking could have done more. Dahari, just a great run, great defense. He did everything right.
So Gabriel Dahari in his first career four-wide race gets a W for the first time. Brandon Hawken so close to the cigar once again, but falls short. Second place by 1/10 of a second. Duncan Fall, his best career four-wide racing series event, in third tonight from Iowa. He beats Austin Reedy to the stripe. Close fight between those two in the waning laps, and got to give credit to Reedy for the absolute comeback drive he executed over this race after being involved in two separate accidents to bring out yellow flags on two separate occasions. Tristan Bailey completes a Murray Reedy Motorsports 4th and 5th place outing. Lawson Peel, who, mind you, had recovered from a restart in 19th after speeding on pit road exit, he recovers for P6. Craig Lautenslager back in 7th. Trevor Haley, consistent and quiet night for the Indiana native, is 8th place. Mikey Neal ends up in 9th, and Michael Newbraw, Francisco Bacalhau, in a day where he probably needed a ton of points, he gets all that and some more.
Great run from Michael Newbraw. Ryan Pandicio finishes in the 11th spot. How about Timothy Cook with a 12th place effort here tonight? Definitely a good run for the 19th. Christopher Bishop will finish in 13th. Brandon Banks in the 14th position should help him in his cut line battle. Craig Parks had an incident, will finish in 15th. Cody Kinsey in 16th. Jaden Porter sustained some damage in that crash that he had with Bauman, repaired it, was able to bring it back in 17th on the lead lap. Tyler Murray will finish in 18th. Curtis Kelly will finish in the 19th spot, and rookie Zach Hill, in his first ever four-wide start after spinning a couple times, will finish 5 laps down in the top 20.
Back in the 21st position sits DJ Munier. In the 21, Nicholas Bauman, who we saw upside down, finishes in 22nd. Jesse Prees back in 23rd. Lance Hill in 24th. AJ Green, who we saw have a lot of speed early in this showing, finished in 25th after some incidents late in the race. And Eric Schaefer, who climbed his way all the way up to a podium step before going head-on into the fence, finishes back in 26th.
And that's your full field from the virtual Iowa Speedway. And for the 5th consecutive race, we have a driver take their first win of the season. It started back in Talladega with Lance Hill getting his win number 1 this season, then Porter at Darlington, Scott Healy at Kansas, Nicholas Bauman at the All-Star race at Las Vegas, and Gabriel Dahari now from the virtual Iowa Speedway. Let's get a moment to talk with Dahari, who in his first race stunts out, pops out, and takes the victory by, I don't know, about a 10th or so, but in a hard-fought battle. Gabriel, welcome to Paul's Setup Shop Victory Lane for the first time. Plain and simple, how does this feel given the context of those last 25?
Man, that felt phenomenal, brother. Brandon did such a great job putting me under pressure. I was losing it mentally. I was like, oh, he's going to get me here. Oh, he's going to get me here. And he didn't. Luckily, I squeezed him down as good as I could in 3 and 4. He had a crazy cutback line in 1 and 2. I really thought that was going to do me in. But that was really fun with him. He kept it clean. And yeah, that was great.
And coming off of your first technical start, which was the All-Star race at Las Vegas, you ran in the open. Unfortunately, you couldn't advance through with some troubles. What did you feel going into this first race? Because you can think of, obviously, the fact that drivers are fighting for playoff spots, and it's an overarching regular season that's coming to a close in several months. What did you feel heading into this race versus how you felt by the time you were midway through?
Man, in practice, I saw Hawken, and he had the best time. One of my friends who run this league, he was like, "You got to watch out for Hawking," and I just didn't want to. I just didn't want to ruin anyone's race. Oh, as my car explodes, I didn't want to ruin anyone's race, considering I'm not really going for a championship. I don't think, but yeah, he is definitely Hawkins is definitely a very good driver.
Got to mention from our fellow booth member, Francisco Bacallao, who was with you in a SJRL Dover race last night that you took part in. Very fast in that race as well. And the question more so is what you learned from that race, because Iowa, I mean, it's different from Dover, two different types of pavements, but very tough tracks to drive. That's the common thread between those venues in Dover and in Iowa. Was there anything that you learned from that race last night that maybe helped the discipline, maybe helped the long run pace heading into this one?
You know, Dover actually really did help me out. They look like two completely different tracks, but they drive, I want to say, almost similar, other than, of course, the lines. But the way you have to think about controlling the car is very similar, and that really prepared me to, because those are both very loose tracks, and I was in that driving a loose car mindset, and that helped me a bunch for this race, I think. Shout out Francisco for winning that race.
Well, Gabriel, it is your first career race, your first career win. You become the third driver this season to accomplish such a feat. And I think the tailing part of that is that the legacy for those drivers who have already won this season, it's been pretty good, especially with Steven Maggio, who's won 3 already this season. So it feels like there may be another threat looming for all those in the field here with you. Before we let you go on this victory from Iowa Speedway, anybody you want to give a shout out to or thank for tonight's performance?
I would like to shout out Steven Maggio, my friend, for putting the contingencies on my car. I wanted to do that out of respect for the league. And shout out to Brandon Hawken, of course, being such a good, clean driver throughout that race and making it very fun.
Well, we certainly appreciate the time, Gabriel. On behalf of all of us at the KBueno Racing Network, congratulations on your first, hopefully a first of many in this series. Congratulations, you earned it, and hopefully we'll see you at Nashville Superspeedway next week.
Thank you, guys. Have a good one.
Gabriel Dahari, in his first start, takes the W from Iowa in amazing fashion. Brandon Hawken gave it all that he could. Francisco Bacallao in those final laps and could not take the win. But a hard-fought effort, a respectable effort nonetheless.
It was another great effort from yourself, Brandon Hawken, but seems like you always end up on the second place side of the story, like Kyle Larson famously was in the late 2010s. Just kind of walk us through what it was like battling another driver trying to capture his first win.
Man, that was a ton of fun. Man, I don't know how many laps there is. 20 or so odd laps we were side by side, and yeah, I was just trying to do everything I could to get a little bit of an edge, but yeah, Gabriel did a fantastic job there on the high side, and yeah, just couldn't get around him. But man, I was having an absolute blast. I hope he was too. Hope everybody had a really great time watching that, because that was a ton of fun behind the wheel. Yeah, lost the lead there, but mid-race-ish. I was wanting to save a set of tires just because of the way the cautions were going, but and then yeah, just came down to that last restart. I felt like I had a really good short run pace. Long run was like okay, but I felt like I was really good in the short run. So try getting all I could there off that final restart. But just trying different lines. Trying to fake him out, do anything, but yeah, he did a fantastic job getting the runs off the high side, and I yeah did all I could without getting into him. But man, that was some really great stuff. Really clean driving from Gabriel, and saw as we were fighting, saw Duncan catching up there towards the end. I was just hoping he didn't have enough laps to come get us both, because he might have had the freshest stuff out of both of us, because we were fighting so hard. And man, that was just an absolute blast. So man, I second once again, but I don't mind. That was a really great race.
You know, I also have to ask you, Brandon, how was your experience at the Homestead Miami Speedway?
Oh man, yes, Homestead. That was a like a totally new, like something that never experienced before. Like the track itself, it was getting like extremely like the longer the day would go, the slicker the infield would get, and it was just like each session you had to dial it back more and more because almost became like a skating rink. And turn 2 on the road course, absolutely like fantastic. I love that corner. But so you're coming off the oval at like 140, you slam down into the infield, and you got to get woed up for turn 2, and it's pretty sketchy, but a lot of fun. And then the oval was another really cool thing. As you get into the corner, like you just feel like as you set into the banking, you could feel the steering wheel just like gradually getting heavier and heavier until you're at the point where you could like barely move it at all. And then you're like the sensation that you get, it's kind of like an elevator feeling, but like prolonged throughout the entire corner. So that was really neat. And so I could imagine what it would be like going through there at like 170, 180 in a stock car, because that was pretty neat. But yeah, had a great weekend, or sorry, weekday at Homestead, and finished fourth in both my races, and team did a fantastic job the entire weekend. And we got Atlanta coming up in I think it's on the 25th, so they'll be on Racing Prodigy's Instagram channels, maybe YouTube as well. And but yeah, man, fantastic race tonight, and had a lot of fun there in the SR1 at Homestead last week, and some really good stuff going on in racing right now.
Yeah, I think I can speak for Kenneth when I say that we appreciate the fact that you enjoyed racing at the Homestead Miami Speedway and you were able to have a great impression of the racetrack. And just imagine, you were driving there early February. Imagine what that racetrack's like in the summer months as far as grip is concerned. And I think you would definitely probably lost an additional 5 pounds just working that race car around that racetrack, Brandon. But we appreciate the time you take with us every single week when you show up here and give us some great talks in these interviews. Just give the shout out to everybody that helps make this happen for you and your 98 team.
Yeah, I'd just like to thank you guys on the broadcast, everybody at 4Wide, Gabriel for the fantastic race. That was so much fun, and everybody came out to race tonight. Some really good stuff there tonight. So just like to thank everybody them, Sucker Punch as always, and we'll see you guys next week, I believe. So I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, we appreciate it once again, Brandon, and I can't wait to join you on the racetrack next week in Nashville. See you then.
Sounds good. We'll see you on the track.
That's Brandon Hawkins. Short, but always a great interview and always a great talk with Brandon as he settles into second after this long race from Iowa. Third place belongs to Duncan Fall, his best career 4-wide finish in his rookie season. Duncan, how about it? Finally, after some bad luck in your career this season, you break through third place at the end of this long green flag run. What did that feel like?
Honestly, I don't know what to think about it. It's only my second lead lap finish, I'm pretty sure. But it is pretty crazy. I wasn't expecting to finish in the top 3 with no practice.
Well, you had some trouble to begin this race. You were loose off turn 4 and you spun, but you got right back into the mix. And I think past halfway is where you found your rhythm and the speed started coming to you. What did you learn over the course of this race as this track developed? Because it brought some problems to many, but at the end, everyone seemed to have figured it out, including yourself.
Yeah, I gotta give thanks to Jaden Porter. He's helping me. You just had to stay really patient on the throttle. I got too eager at the very start. Almost spun like 2 or 3 times. But just gotta be patient, save your tires. That long run is really helpful for me. Went down and got some new tires and able to keep my position.
Well, Duncan, third place here at Iowa. I'm sure it means a lot, and hopefully this is the start of many other great finishes down the line in the rest of your rookie campaign in this series. What do you see happening next in the latter half of this regular season? Any other tracks that particularly spark your interest, or any ones that we may see you be a threat at?
Really, just any of them spark my interest. I'm not able to make most of the races, so any of them that I can, I'll be there for and try my best.
Well, Duncan, I'm sure this is a very happy moment. Third place in this Iowa Speedway debut for you in your four-wide career. Before we let you go on this third place performance, anybody you want to give a shout out to or thank for tonight?
Shout out you and Francisco for letting me drive for your team. Shout out Steven, Justin, Rivers, and Jerk if they're still watching. That's about all I can think of.
Well, Duncan, on behalf of all of us at the KBueno Racing Network and on behalf of Francisco and myself, we're happy to talk to you for the first time in an interview setting from this series. We appreciate the time. Congratulations on your first career four-wide podium, and we'll see you at the field, hopefully at Nashville Superspeedway next Wednesday.
Thank you. See you there.
Duncan Fall, his best finish, third here at Iowa in great fashion, and beat Austin Reedy by just a couple of hundreds of thousands of a second, mind you, to the start-finish line at the checkered flag. Well, Francisco, we'll close it out here. Our final thoughts from Iowa. And just like Charlie told us on Pay Road, I think these drivers are allergic to bad finishes. This season has been unpredictable and unprecedented, but we've seen historic firsts and plenty of drivers come back to the top of the podium regardless of it. This is another added page to history with Gabriel Dahari taking the win.
Yeah, just another bit of four-wide canon events that happen, which is somebody new joins in and they capture their first career win in their first start. We saw Madja do it. We saw Kyle Tursak do it. We've seen now Gabriel Dahari do it here today, and I don't think this will be the last one for the season. I think we probably still have a few more in style left in us for this season if we know how four-wide truly ends up being. So now we move on to the Music City, Kenneth, a racetrack that usually has put on some good races, which, I mean, kind of to toot our own horn here, we kind of own that place if we're being honest as team owners. We've captured 3 of the 4 wins at the races that that's hold. I'm hoping to see if I can add on to that trend once again. I'll be at the racetrack next week, actually racing this time, not like in the starting lineup like I was today. So I'm hoping to give the Oreo Coca-Cola Zero Sugar machine another right chance after sustaining that pretty big damage in the All-Star race. So keep an eye out on that Oreo Coke number 30 next week.
Francisco will be there next Wednesday, February 19th. Keelan, Charlie, and I will have the coverage for you in the broadcast booth and on pit road in the Music City. Nashville takes place next Wednesday. That'll be at 8:45 p.m. Eastern, where our Dropping the Hammer pre-race show coverage starts before race coverage at 9:10 p.m. Eastern. You can find all of that and more on the KBueno Racing Network YouTube channel. You can peek the rest of the schedule as we head on the road to Daytona. As we push on forward, we've got some big news for that Nashville Superspeedway race that takes place next week. Possible tournament on the line for drivers that are looking to advance to the playoffs if they cannot get a checkered flag in hand. So that'll do it for our coverage of the 4-Wide Racing TJ's Team Series from the virtual Iowa Speedway. For Tyler Murray and the entire admin team and race council that makes each and every week's race happen here on this series, and for all of us at the KBueno Racing Network, for our crew on tonight's broadcast, our pit road reporter Charlie Beyer, Keelan Belsha, Francisco Bacallao, I'm Kenneth Bueno saying so long from Newton. Gabriel Dahari, for the first time as a 4-wide race winner. We'll see if we can string up some new tunes at Nashville Superspeedway next Wednesday. But until then, so long from Iowa.